Hello, boys. This is White Pill Media, and welcome back to the Trough. I have another long one for you. I would recommend using the timestamps below to jump ahead if you wish. I'm going to try to keep this beginning part a little faster. My low time preference has doomed me yet again. I am recording this late on Saturday night, trying to have this uploaded sometime Sunday. I don't know if that's going to happen. If this isn't uploaded on Sunday, then I'm really sorry. But I kind of got fucked over by some coworkers at work on Friday, so I didn't have nearly enough time when I got home to work on this and prepare my notes. But I also fucked myself as well by not doing my notes for each book, after reading a title, doing all my notes for the trough for it there and then. So it was Monday, and then Monday I'm like, wow, I gotta write out notes for 12 fucking books. And yeah, that was just a shit show. So I just really fucked myself there. I don't really have anyone else to blame but me, so maybe this video is not coming out on Sunday. Sorry. And as you know, I'm recording this video with a noose around my neck, teetering on the edge of a chair. Will this be the episode where I take the step forward? And you, of course, are all wearing your YouTuber noose merch as well. But we're just going to have to see, is this a good trough or a bad trough? I'll have some announcements at the end, but before I introduce each work, I thought I'd read to you from the Quran. Is that all right, boys? Is that all right if I just grab my trusty Quran here and flip through it? So in honor of Milad Nabi, which we're a bit early for. It's September 16th. It's the celebration of the Prophet Muhammad's birthday, as you're all familiar with. I want to read you a passage from the Prophet's first wife to celebrate this great holy day. Here it is. Thank you, boys. Now we may continue. Another note, the Hate Spree review video that I had on Odyssey is now on YouTube. I uploaded it to Odyssey a while ago because I was a little afraid of having it on the YouTube channel because it's a little more explicit material than I typically have. But I decided to move it over here, which I should have really done at the start. It's just every once in a while, you get a little scared. You delete some stuff because you get a little worried. But it should be here. And I've definitely covered and said worse things on this channel. And most of you probably already know, but Tuki's Mag put up a review of Hate Spree 2, so you can check that out if you want, if you haven't seen it already. Hate Spree is comedy. There's a lot of humor that people on this side of things would enjoy. It's almost entirely action-oriented. Yeah, it doesn't hold anything back. Very graphic, action-wise, kind of sexually-wise, so if you're not into that, maybe you won't enjoy it. But you can check it out if you want. And yeah, it should be on YouTube, so here it is. And if you saw it on Odyssey, it's literally the same video, so don't watch it twice. So you can just ignore it. Thank you, boys. Now we may continue. This trough, we're technically doing 12 titles, but in reality, we're really more doing 10 of them. A few titles came over from an X thread. This X thread was there's this 30-something-year-old NGE cosplayer chick. You might know of her tangentially, but a friend of mine's hey, this chick has a thread where people are posting their right-wing books or whatever. So I'm okay, I'll check that out. So two of these books, The Disastrous Chance Noir and United States of Death, were in that thread. And I have a few others that I'll be reading for the next trough. So that's where two of these come from. Two of these are non-trough indie books. We have the Habsburgs and we have the Tain. And then one more, The Path of Lightning. This is by Warren Walker. This is an ARC copy of this book, so it's not available for purchase yet. And I was asked to not do my typical retrospective where I kind of go through the entire book just in the interest of not spoiling things before it's even released. So I agreed to that, but I'm going to talk about that a little bit spoiler free. So I'm just going to briefly outline each book, give the author a brief description, if it's a recommendation or not. We have United States of Death by Xander Schreiber, and this is about a future dystopian world with the hardware and software administration that controls all technology. We have this guy, Matthew Driggs, who finds himself framed in this terrorist hack that's going to send an asteroid to Earth. And then we have this agent, Dulcie Raines, who is looking to secure a better future for herself, right? And there's also like this really expansive virtual world where they're trying to track down who the real terrorist is. This is a recommendation with a little asterisk next to it. I really did like this. It was very interesting, and I do want to read more by this author. I will say I did find that there were a few parts where I think we need to spend a little more time like dwelling on some action, where we just kind of rush through moments. But like overall, I really enjoyed it. This was very interesting work. So if you want to go into this spoiler free, I recommend skipping the part where I talk about it and just purchasing it. There's Path of Lightning by Warren Walker. Since I'm going to be really brief with this one when I talk about it, I'm just going to talk about it then. But this is a recommendation. It's grim, dark fantasy, very violent, very action heavy. But I would say while I disliked a lot of Warren Walker's previous books, this one has characters that are more humane. It has characters that you can root for and care about their outcomes. So I like this a lot more. This is a big improvement for me. The Habsburgs by Martin Rand. This was a 330-page book on the Habsburgs. This is the only title for the Trough I did not finish, because it was dog shit, and I hate this author. I don't have too much to say about it, but I'll save it for then. What a piece of shit. The Tain, this is about Irish mythology. This is the cattle raid of Cooley. This is Cuchulainn. This is not a indie Trough work, but I am going to talk about it briefly and read some excerpts when I get to it. This is not really a recommendation unless you're really kind of into Irish mythology. A lot of parts of it were very dry and just kind of unnecessary in my opinion, and I didn't have a great time with it. Minakai, Monster Tamer. This is by Jordan Allen. So this is a lighthearted fantasy series. Basically, kid goes around, you can collect monsters and evolve them. It's a Pokemon-esque story, right? This is a recommendation. I'll put a little asterisk next to it. I would say, unlike United States of Death, I feel like this one drags a bit kind of towards the end. I felt like our characters weren't as proactive as they could have been. So yeah, it's still a recommendation. I definitely read more by Jordan Allen, but I think I would place this lower than like stuff like his Hollow Realms works and his Mutagenesis. I did enjoy those more. The Living Hypnotic Death. This is by Arbogast. This is a anthology of some of his short stories and some of the essays that he's written. This is a strong recommendation if you've never read anything by Arbogast before. This is great. I'll have more to say about later. We have The Perfect and the Wicked. This is by T.R. Hudson. This is a alternate history of the Kennedy family and their rise to power in America, told from the point of view of John Kennedy Sr. This is a non-recommendation. I'll have more to say later. We have The Flowers of the Moon by Alexander Palicio. This is book 2 of the Ashes of the Urn series. This one is a recommendation with an asterisk, kind of like Minakai Tamers. There were parts of it where it felt kind of slow and not enough kind of happened. So yes, if you read book 1, I think this is worth reading and continuing it, and does set up really interesting stuff for later on, but this one drags a bit. We have Dragon Day by Matthew Pegas. This is a non-recommendation. It's kind of about a young man who becomes radicalized in college, and This is a shorter work. It's 130 pages, and we also split the narrative into two POVs, and I think that's a detriment. But yeah, I'll have more to say about that later, but that's a non-recommendation. Automaton by T.R. Hudson. This is about a man who's a super soldier in a Civil War future America, and he's traveling across the country to complete this mission to kill a person. This had issues. I will get into that later, but this is a non-recommendation. And we have The Shadow Men by T.J. Martinell. This is a novel about some agents that fight against communism and protect America. It is mixed for me. I would say that it had no real valleys and it had no real peaks either. The Disastrous Chance Noir, and as I said, this is from that one thread on Twitter. This is by Jack Wayne. We have a young man in Paris who takes up chivalry and the knighthood and stands up for his people. And morally and emotionally, I can agree with Jack Wayne, and we're on the same side. However, this was a pretty bad book, and this is also a non-recommendation. So, if I said anything that sounded interesting, you can skip whenever I talk about that book so you don't spoil it for yourselves. Check out the title on your own. Yeah, some of them have a rushing problem. Some of them have a dragging problem.
Now answer my question. Were you rushing or were you dragging?
Let's discuss The Disastrous Chance Noir by Jack Wayne. Our main character here is Andres Lyon. He lives in Paris. He likes stories about knighthoods and chivalry and honor. He does not live in a good time. Paris is a shithole. There's a lot of crime and immigrants and all this bullshit. And then one day he gets a magic ring that gives him pseudo superpowers, and he decides to start cleaning up Paris. And then he meets this one bakery chick and decides to help her. So I'm going to describe the cover to you. I highly recommend looking it up for yourself. But we have our protagonist. He's wearing black. He has a little mask. He's got a sword, and he's protecting this woman on the ground. She has blue hair, very pale, big thighs, and she's crying, and she also has monster tits, like massive tits. Like if she took her shirt off, you'd have two Quasimodos staring at you, like not as big as Quasimodo's humpback, but like his huge, ugly fucking face. That size, like really big. Like Jack Wayne must have been very specific with the artist about the size of these breasts, or he drew it himself because frankly the artwork is fairly amateur. I don't know. Oh, and then there's like a guy with two knives, and he's like all in dark, but you can see his blue eyes, and he's advancing towards them with the Eiffel Tower in the background. Like seriously, look up this book on Amazon. You can see the cover there. Like very large, like very, very large. Like I agree with the ideas and beliefs of Jack Wayne, but this is not done well. And another thing about this book is it is written in the present continuous tense. I have never seen this before in my life, ever. It was very weird, and I see why it's not a popular style. Also, we have weird punctuation that's not repeated on page 1. We have sentences that end where it's like ending quotation marks and then a period outside of it, like that. And I'm like, this is very bizarre. And maybe this is me being extremely petty, but it has him kicking a rock pebble as he strolled through the sidewalk. What other type of pebble is there besides a rock one? So I'm just reading some of this aloud. Like this is page 6. And now he's hungry. Good thing he told his father that he would stay outside until midnight to enjoy himself to the fullest, not that he had. And he's just wandering around Paris. He hates newcomers. He laments that Paris used to be this beautiful place, and now it's so ugly. He bought this old ring off a man that supposedly is supposed to make you strong or whatever. And then he wanders into a bakery because he's hungry. There's this crying girl. I'll describe her on page 7. She looked to be a girl about the same age as him, slender, average height, the usual. She looked decent with her blue eyes, light freckles on both sides, and the bridge of her nose, and the most noticeable thing was her hair. Black hair with blue reflections reaching down to her shoulders. The most noticeable thing was her hair. Bull fucking shit. There's no mention of her monster fucking tits, so don't play the little tradcath, ooh, no, I can't describe her sexually. What is that on the cover, pal? What is that on the fucking cover, pal? Anyway, her name's like Marianne or whatever. Some thugs enter the bakery and they tell Andreas to get the fuck out of there. So he runs, but he decides to come back when he hears Marianne crying. So I'm going to read to you from page 12. I might take a screenshot. Another thing with Jack Wayne, not to just be too much of an asshole, but he will do all capitalization, like entire sentences in capitalization. This is from page 12. They were beating her. They were going to kill her. All caps. Stop it. What the hell are you doing? I said, stop. Run to the back, Marianne, and lock the door behind you. We use all caps a lot. We used question mark exclamation point quite a bit. And so Andreas is like fighting these guys, and then he puts on the ring, and the ring gives him power because it's magic, and he's able to defeat them. Just sentences overall are just constructed kind of just awkwardly. They just sound weird. On page 20, just give me a few moments to myself and then I'll leave. I need to silently process what happened tonight to myself. But I don't know. Like, I don't know if the style is common anywhere, really. I just don't really know. But then he's walking Marianne back to the bakery. She says that these guys were a gang looking for protection money. And she talks about how ineffective the government is and they're all corrupt. And it turns out her bakery is being burned down. This Andreas decides to do some vigilante justice. So he's using his ring to scale buildings and he enters the local gang's hideout. 31, he overhears some gang members talking. They gangbang girls together. One of them blackmails women to sleep with him. Says that the baker girl has one of the sweetest asses I've ever seen, which is it's just bizarre to me. It's just kind of insane to me that why are we discussing her ass at all? I don't get it. I just do not understand what this author's problem is.
No, if I can just see it again, I'll be fine. No, Butter, stop. Leave me alone. Stop it. Stop. Oh, God. Oh, God, help us.
All right, but we're not going to talk about Marianne anymore. Okay, we're done with Marianne. And there's a bit of a tonal clash on 33 where Andreas surprises two thugs and he grabs them by their heads and then he smacks their heads together like it's a cartoon and it knocks them out. We're dealing with like actual rapists and actual killers, so it doesn't exactly work, especially because we don't like keep up a lighter tone. So it doesn't exactly work. Once Andreas has like burned their hideout down and stolen a bunch of money from them, he goes back to Marianne, who's about to jump to her death, but Lion saves her, and then he decides to bring her home, and she is now their live-in big-titted French maid. No, she doesn't wear a French maid outfit, but that's what she does. She looks after Lion's grandmother and bakes, and she has big tits. So, yeah, that's it. And then Andreas' father also lives with them, and he's just like a strict piece of shit. She's staying there until the bakery is being rebuilt, and they're using the stolen money from the gangsters to do it. We have gangsters plotting their revenge. Core is our gang boss. And then Andreas goes to the cops again for help. He sits down with a family friend, Commissioner Songri, whatever, I don't care. And then this commissioner goes into detail about how insane George Floyd was, about how crazy it was that people were against the police in that situation. And I know all about this. I already agree. And it's a little tedious reading this stuff. I think it's a question about like audience. Like I personally don't think that normies are ever really going to give indie stuff like this a chance, right? So they're not going to pick it up and really engage with it. There's just too much normie content for them. So that's not going to happen. I think your best bet is people disaffected by the mainstream, which means they will typically be on the right, not always. And they already know this stuff about George Floyd. So little pieces like this are just kind of a waste of time, I think. And Marianne earlier was describing Antifa and anarcho-tyranny, and Andreas is just taking it all in, and he's just stunned for several pages. And it's just okay, I know, and the people reading this probably already know and agree with it. I guess I just kind of want to hit the ground running more with books. On 93, it made me question if the author was in fact an ESL. His father asks, "Where have you been?" And he replies, "Training my fencing, father." And I'm like, that's not a native English speaker, is it? I don't think so. I don't know. It made me question it. Maybe I'm wrong. 109, we have exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. We have bang, 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 all in bold letters, capitalized. So this works in the comic book. It doesn't work here. It doesn't work in this medium. And he's still fighting these criminal gangs. So he's beating up illegal aliens and smugglers at a port because they're trying to sneak into Britain. He learns that the boss is Layut, and Layut has blue tips on his hair because, I don't know, I guess the author likes anime a bit. Oh, and Andreas, as he's beating the shit out of people, he follows up on a tip, and he doesn't find anything there, but it's actually a trap. Oh, and we had this weird kind of breaking of POV on 147. Let's stop and analyze what Andreas currently has on his hands. And Layut also has a magic ring, and he also has different colored eyes. And he mentions angels, but the author spelled it angles, but I guess they're called angels, and people who have rings are called angels. I guess there's going to be more books where we get into that. Andreas barely escapes with his life. He's in and out of a coma. He dreams, and he literally recalls the Song of Roland. No exaggeration on my part. I did question if this is a very long dream sequence was actually happening. It is. After he's healed up, he ends up at a carnival with Marianne, and he's on a Ferris wheel together with her, but they don't kiss. He's not that type of guy. No, I can't kiss a woman on a Ferris wheel. After Marianne asks him to put the bakery in her name, this alerts the criminals so they know where she's staying right now. So the bad guys hijack an Antifa protest, and they direct them to Lion's home, and they break into his house, and his grandmother gets killed and is beaten to death. I don't understand why Core does what he does, for money, I guess, just to hurt people, I guess. But we never get an explanation, or even a flimsy one. He's just a villain. He's not exactly compelling or interesting. Maybe he's just a sadist, but he's not a strong villain. He dreams again. He fights a demon in his dreams, and then he meets with Roland, who hands him the sword, and then he goes to have a battle of Layut. This happens on 257. I'm quoting from 257. Louis staggered away in shock, his hand hanging uselessly from his wrist by a single thread of flesh. Andreas literally cuts Layut into little pieces, and he kind of fucking tortures him, which he deserves. But we're a lot of all caps here of Louis begging for his life. And then all the people that are watching just start cheering and go, hooray, hooray, hooray. Which I don't know. I don't know if that's the most believable thing necessarily, but hey, it happens. And after this, we have Marianne being pursued by some rapists. She's just walking around because Andreas hasn't come home, and she takes shelter in the church, and Lion is there praying. And then he kills these evil men, and then he goes home with her, and he works and lives with Marianne at the bakery, and that's it. I absolutely would not read more by this author. As I said, on just kind of an emotional, moral level, sure, we're on the same side. Why not? A very bad book, very awkward sentence construction. I think the author maybe is an ESL. That would explain some things. But it's just not like a strong or compelling narrative, really. It can happen where it's like things could just get leaned into too much, where it's like, oh, and then he has to fight these guys who are doing this thing we don't like, and then that thing we don't like, and then also this third thing that we don't, it's always like, you stack it up so much to where it's just too much. Dragon Day, Matthew Pegas. Okay. This was mentioned by David from Tukey's Mag, which henceforth will be known as Dukey's Mag. I did not care for this, and it was not really my type of book.
Let me show you something. Does that look right to you?
This is a book about Toby Sharp, who's a freshman at college that falls under the wing of a sinister professor. It's about the rise of the alt-right, Antifa, radicalization. It's a short book of about 136 pages, and it's divided between two POVs, Toby and Charles. I felt like this was too short, and the two POVs was a mistake since it cuts our narrative in half. So Toby felt a bit underdeveloped to me, and so did some other characters. I think Charles, who is mostly in the background, could have been cut totally, and there are other reasons I would have liked him cut. Anyways, let's get to it. We start with an intro set 1 year after the bombing of Lockdown University, which happens in 2015 during the school's Dragon Day parade. It killed 23 people and injured another 46. The bomb was blown by Toby, who himself was killed. And Charles wants to cover the real terror of the tragedy. I don't love this flash forward. We're set in 2016. It adds some expectation about what's going to happen. I guess it builds some anxiety because we know what outcome has to happen. But I just don't really enjoy flash forwards that much. But anyway, on to chapter 1. Toby stood before the mirror contemplating his penis. Stop reading right there. No, but Toby is a insecure boy. He's nervous. He's a sensitive young man, and he's an English major. Oh, he's not assertive. He gets turned away from a party, and then on page 11, it happens. So Toby's in this locker room and he's getting changed, and then there's another man in this locker room, and then so Toby gets raped. I'll read to you from page 13. The man pushed Toby's head down and bent him over, and with that, Toby knew it was hopeless, that the man was totally in control. Then the penis, a burning feeling like something opening inside of him, an intense mix of pleasure and pain. I love our Substack writers. After this event, Toby hides in his room for a few days, and then he goes to an open house hoping that Zoe, his girlfriend who asked for some space, would be there, but she isn't. He's self-delusional on pages 23 and 24, where if Zoe came and cried to him, that he would eventually accept her and everything would be okay. Plays himself up as this hero in his fantasy about beating the shit out of this guy Ronnie, who's just kind of a nice guy. There's this really charismatic professor called Wallingford, and Toby is pretty sure that this guy is the guy who raped him. And this Wallingford is a lefty guy. He acknowledges stolen land before he begins his little speech. We get some backstory of Charles. Charles is with Wallingford, and he also has a backstory of being with some radical leftists as they cancel this old professor and drive him out of the department. Toby is forced to meet with Wallingford to get enrolled into the English department, and he gets invited to a special lecture at Wallingford's home. Charles works with Wallingford on his thesis. The thesis is called Everything in Literature Signifies the Penis Except for the Penis, which signifies war. It says that you can determine the penis size of any male author by carrying out a method of close reading that Charles titled the Falgorithm, which that's very cute. Okay. Oh, and then Toby finally talks to Zoe on page 45. They meet at the campus store. She was buying some very Zoe type items, a peach face scrub, a bag of organic quinona, whatever the fuck that is, and an 8-pack of Pamplemousse La Croque. And Zoe doesn't want anything to do with him, trying to avoid him. Hey, I don't want to be with you anymore, blah, blah, blah. This makes him a bit racist towards some people he sees on campus. And then he goes back to his dorm room to check out some porn, but he's kind of disgusted by it. So he looks at the thesis that Wallingford sent him, and he's intrigued by it. Toby undergoes this little metamorphosis, and he starts thinking highly of the professor. He goes to the lecture on page 59 at Wallingford's home. And then on page 65, we have another chapter of Charles. I will read to you. It was also around that time that I met Oliver. He was 26, a second-year PhD student studying classical philosophy. We'd met on Tinder, a dating app, and we're having lunch and drinks at some vegan restaurant near campus. Charles is a man. Oliver's also a man. That means Charles is a fucking gay. So, no, I don't like Charles, goddammit. Why? Why would you split your narrative in half to have a homosexual? I don't want to read about a homosexual, okay? Whatever. We'll keep going. But yeah, no, I don't like Charles. On 73, we talk about the March protest, which is about like a group called Patriots United. It's about like pure white nationalism. So it's just some campus kind of Antifa clash with other groups thing. It doesn't really get out of hand, but there we go. Doesn't really have much to do with Toby. I guess it has some stuff to do with kind of the alt-right and that type of thing, campuses, etc. We get a bit more of this on 81 to 83. We talk about the Patriots United marching with tiki torches prior to clashing with Antifa. Internet, this anti-liberal backlash had gotten its start where people were being radicalized, fringe, alt-right web culture. Boys, I'm going to say it. No more Seville. I'm tired of Seville. I think people just want to bring up Seville over and over again, just introducing the same topics. It's almost like guys that want to bring up Starship Troopers and like, whoa, can you believe that the left identifies with the bugs? Like, yeah, I fucking know. Like, I know, right? Like, a lot of books are like trying to make this middle ground or trying to break this topic to kind of your normies. But I'll just say that, like, Terror House Publishing, that's not like a normie publisher. I think everyone reading this stuff or books from them knows. They already know. So this isn't also something that's like in a Barnes and Noble. I don't know. I just think it's like super unlikely that someone's just browsing Amazon. They're going to get recommended Dragon Day and be, and that's not like any offense to Dragon Day or Terror House Publishing. I just think like the guys buying it already know. So who exactly is kind of the audience? I kind of question if these kind of sections of Charles could really just be cut, because what are they really adding? And while I do feel that Seville is maybe overplayed, who is going to write the Dissident Right podcast book? Betrayals, drama, merchandise. You got some 30-something-year-old crusty single mom that they fight over who vaguely says racist things, so all the people in the chat say based. Yeah, where is the, like, podcast book? That would be fucking great. There's probably a shit ton of material people have for that. That would be good. No more Seville. Do a podcast book. That'd be funny. Oh, and then Charles, after looking through some footage of these events, thinks that he sees Wallingford's friend Jurgen with the Patriots United. And then Charles gets the boot because he brings this up. So Toby is now Wallingford's guy. And then we have the Wallingford Says bit on 91, which is this creepy little mantra where Wallingford says chaos is the motor of history, all this stuff, something about homosexual being a necessary defense and builder of strength in times of chaos. Wallingford and Jurgen are just like beating the fuck out of Toby at the end of it. They took him out of the woods and they beat him. He briefly sees Charles, then admits that he's suicidal to him, and they build a bomb in part 3, and Toby is planning to use the bomb, but on page 121 he confronts Zoe at this party and he just gets thrown out. And I don't think I really care about Zoe that much, because when we start the book, We don't really have any interaction with Zoe because she's already distant from him. So she's just like this object that he's pursuing, which is fine. But I don't know. I guess I don't feel too much about it just because I don't think it's really developed. I just don't really care. He attacks Ronnie, and then he's a pussy about it after he beats him, which that was kind of gay. He doesn't want to bomb anyone anymore. It's like, look, man, you built a bomb, right? You're the guy that threw up the Roman. You can't throw up the Roman. You can't make the bomb. That's not how it works. Whatever. But he doesn't want to do it anymore. So he goes to his closet for the bomb, and the bomb is missing. He doesn't know what's going on. But he goes to the parade the next day. We have this on 127 where he's like looking at the students who were wheeling the dragon around, blah, blah, blah. There's something about them collectively which struck Toby as androgynous and sexy. Walking alongside the dragon today, too, also in tight black clothes, also in face paint. Little gay. And the bomb goes off with Toby being next to like the paper mache dragon thing, and he gets blown up with everyone. And there's that. And the epilogue, Wallingford has gone missing. Charles is living with Oliver. Why do I care about this homosexual? And that's it. I thought that this needed a tighter focus. I think there is like a story there with like a young guy gets radicalized at college, and this is kind of his breakdown, and then maybe at the end he decides he doesn't want to do this anymore, and then it's kind of too late. Sure, that's something, but I don't know. I feel like splitting the narrative of, and well, all right, the gay thing is definitely part of my dislike, but also just like Toby's not given enough space to kind of grow into something. So I felt like we were rushing a bit here. That was Dragon Day. Flowers of the Moon by Alexander Palicio. This is, as I said, the second book of the Ashes of the Urn series. We are in Mesoamerica. It's an action-adventure, Conan-esque, kind of swords and sorcery, right? I did read and recommend the first book, Last Trough. So this is also a recommendation with an asterisk next to it. I will read more by this author, but I did feel that there were some pacing issues, and it did drag a bit, particularly in the second half. It's a little lethargic. It sets up a lot of future works well, however. We begin with Tezca, our wizard, Kayukali, our warrior, and Zok, our princess and healer, as they head south towards Chimor, the mythical southern kingdom. They decide to head to a city that is called Yizlapen of the Cliffs to resupply there. Tezca has a vision along the way about a hummingbird that vanishes, and then this beautiful woman appears. She has pink flowers with her and calls herself a servant of a god. She shows him a vision of this black volcanic hellscape. Her appearing as this little hummingbird reminded me of the condor. They're just both birds. And then back in camp, they have hot chocolate, and he tells them about his dream, and he finds flowers on his bedroll, and then he keeps them. And then they see a condor overhead, so they were connected. As they make their way to Yizdapan, they find an outlying village that's under attack by bandits. This is their first battle. They stay to help with the villagers until this prince, Neza Koltol, can arrive with his men. The prince does show up, and he does slaughter the rest of the bandits, and most of the people make it out okay. And the prince is happy to capture all these people because this means he can be free of his exile. And turns out both the prince and Tezca have the same dreams with the same flowers because the prince sees the flowers. Our prince was cast out of the city because he believes that there is a god that is supreme above others, and that goes against the teachings of the rest of the city. And there's other trouble within the city. There's some monster on the prowl that's killing people, and also a plague that's going on. So they go there. The prince, he introduces his uncle, the king, to them. And Zok is going to go help with the plague victims. Plague seems to steal like years of life away from people, while Kayukali and Tezca are going to try to slay the monster, right? Because it also plays in their mythology. Because that also plays into their mythology with like two twins that show up and defeat monsters. So they end up running into a shadow monster. It escapes. It has many legs. It's got a shell, jaws. It's kind of like a sea creature insect thing, and they fight with it. The king is continually losing face with his people. So to remedy that, because he hasn't had any progress so far, he organizes a shark hunt. It's a sun shark, which is like this massive, pretty cool shark. This is kind of a sweet scene where they're just out on these little boats with their spears and they're trying to kill the thing. The monster seems to prey on the weak and the sick, so they organize an ambush by putting the sick in the town square, but nothing happens. On page 110, I did really like this scene where the court isn't pleased with the king not solving anything, so he makes a gesture, and then the great doors at the far end of the hall of the royal hall were flung wide. A long train of men entered, dragging a colossal wagon. The stench of rot filled the throne room. If any man needs proof of this beyond the word of Azakulapa, forged in battle and tempered in just rule, only look there. The gods favor Azakulapa. Resting on the huge wagon, dripping gore, was the vast head of the sun shark, dark skin sweating, dead black eyes shining, and blade teeth half the height of a tall man, glistening white. That's pretty based, dragging in your rotting corpse of a shark to silence your critics. That's pretty cool. And Zoc noticed that the plague victims seemed to do better when they were out for a couple hours in the town square than all the healing they were getting back in the infirmary. So she questions that. The monster always attacks by night because that's what monsters do. And she ends up being chased by the monster, and Kayukali and Tezuka kill it. They didn't like it, but this was part of her plan because they used the wrong bait because they just had too many people around, and that's just not how the monster hunts. They do have witnesses to them killing the monster, but the corpse vanishes. And then there's a feast later on, but it's rather short-lived because there's another creature killing again soon after. And Zoc is going around investigating the plague while they're in the archives looking for notes on the creature's lair. And they find out that there's a entrance to the underworld below the palace. So we do have a cool journey to the underworld. And it's like an awesome landscape. It's kind of like what Tezuka saw in his dreams, where it's like this black, horrific landscape. They see a man down there, Chiro, the wizard, who works for Lady Six Sky. Six Sky is like this noble woman that's always like bad-mouthing the king and shit. And she's also one of the people that like helps out with the plague victims, right? She's very evil. She's set out to be evil. It's not a surprise that she's evil. There's some interesting lore on 165 where Tezuka wonders if this wasteland is the fragment of another urn discarded earlier than our own, like the world's been recreated maybe more than once. So that was definitely interesting. I don't know if we're building up to that later on. It's like a sneak peek, like there's cool stuff coming. Like this is a very interesting setting. I wish we did do more with it because they kind of just go down there, they spot Chiro. They also saw like the monster in a separate cavern, and then they go back, right? There's no fights. There's not really a lot of interaction. They don't get to explore too much. I assume because we're going to use like this setting later on, like maybe book 3 or beyond that. Zoc sees Lady Six Sky bathing in moonlight. She's singing evil songs, and she goes ahead with a coup, and the king is killed. It's kind of like in book 1 where they skin the king and cut his hands off and then wear like a little hand necklace, which is just odd. They are working with the prince to defeat Lady Six Sky, and Zoc also knows that the lady poisons people and has given them the plague. It's completely man-made. They kill Chivo, who was turning into like this bull monster, and then they fight the same monster, like the insect sea creature thing again, which was a little dull for me because we fought it like 3 times, and it's just the same creature, just bigger this time. And then Nezca, the prince, kills Lady Six Sky, and the nobles who she was like draining of life energy are now saved. Zoc decides to stay behind while Tezuka and Kayukali will press on. The ending leaves us with the note that this isn't the last time they'd see this city, but many years would pass before they would return. Overall, I'd say Flowers felt okay. The villain was pretty obvious from the start. Well, in these pulps, the villain usually is pretty obvious from the start. But it is somewhat similar to the last book, with the bad guys summoning / like evoking this monster into the realm. The last time it was the serpent. The king is killed again. But there is like a lot of interesting setups. I wish we did do more of the underworld and had some more variety of like the monsters and the fighting, because it's like bandits. Then we fought like the insect monster a couple times. And then like Chivo turned into like a bull monster a little bit. There was the shark battle too. But we did have like more variety in book 1, I felt like. I guess because it is a longer book overall, like the action was just spread out a bit more. So it felt like, I don't know, a little padded, I guess. Like I do want to know more about like their world and what it all means. Like if previous worlds have been destroyed or whatever, if things just keep being reincarnated. I'm curious about like the Condor and if that's their supreme god or whatever, and all that. Definitely interesting stuff. Automaton by T.R. Hudson. I dislike this. Actually, you could say that I hated this book. We're just going to begin. Michael is our protagonist, and we're in the future. He works for a company called Deluge Inc., and he is a recruiter, which basically means just press ganging people into service. Their side is fighting against the Californians. He's riding with a few people. There's Gomez, Chief Axel, Caroline, Newby, Donahue. They go out to cul-de-sacs where petty tyrants have essentially just created shanty towns, and they go there to play politics and press gang people into service. They decide to work with Arlo, who has this petty little kingdom, to get information on his rivals so they can just like take out his rivals and just bring those people in. It's a brutal world where Arlo just executes this guy. We hear a little about Mayday, which was the events where everything went to hell right after that. After this successful mission, they go to Gracie Pub to celebrate. We learn what turning on means, which makes you a powerful soldier that doesn't need to sleep much. You have a lot of resistance to pain and all that, but you don't have any emotions. You activate this by saying a phrase, and Michael has forgotten his words, and he's been like this for 12 years, right? So they're hanging out, and that's all fine. Donahue leaves for a bit and then comes back. Turns out he is raped and brutalized a man by threatening to recruit him. Michael doesn't really care about it because he's not emotional, and he's happy that it's not him. But yeah, Donahue is just a really great guy. We'll talk more about Donahue later. Michael goes home to his mother, who hates him. Deluge is the largest company in the world and has usurped the U.S. government in exile. I did like this scene on page 41. Take me out to the ball game, take me out to the crowds, buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. He spoke to the mirror the whole song without melody. Even when he did like things he knew he didn't like singing, he tried a few more phrases and names, but nothing changed. His father liked John Wayne, and he said about every variation of Saddle Up Pilgrim. Sad little robot man just trying to come up with phrases in the mirror. I thought that was good. He thinks back to one of their earlier missions with Deluge Inc., and they ran into this seemingly nice building with people who've like been living peacefully in the post-apocalypse. Turns out they're cannibals, and it's just kind of like a hell mission where one of their people get killed. But in the present, they're on purple duty, so they visit Jake, a Russian Jew who's a family friend to Michael. So there's going to be this push by Deluge into Manhattan. And Jake says this on page 56. They're going to Manhattan in 2 weeks. From what I've been told, it's not a pleasant place to be, but there's already one section of the city that is yours if the rules are followed. That is, my people are tough, but they shouldn't have to fight any wars. Yes, Jews should not have to fight to rebuild America, but they are entitled to live here. Very good. Jake lays down the law by executing a guy like Arlo. And then he has dinner with Jake. Jake saves Jews. He sends them to Israel. That's his mission. So I guess Israel's doing fine, I guess. Like, at least Israel's made it. Our greatest ally. Hey, wait a minute. If Israel's doing, like, okay right now, and they're our ally, like, we've sent them billions and billions and billions of dollars, why haven't they sent any troops over to help us? You know, I mean, friends helping friends, since we're all allies here. This really confused me. I'm sure they'll address this later on, but I am a goyim, so maybe I just don't understand what T.R. Hudson was writing here. And America's gone to hell, and the Jews won't help to restore it, but that's okay.
But you know that we can't make anything great without the power of Jews. And you know that half our proceeds go to the Military Industrial Research and Development Center of Israel. I just don't see why you hate them so much. Don't you see? They're God's chosen people. Did you know that before Jesus Christ died for our sins, we Gentiles didn't even have souls? Like some kind of subhuman trash. But because God loves you so much, He allowed you to go to heaven, just like His real children, His favorite children, the Jews.
Before Michael can get to Manhattan, he and Donahue get pulled off to go to for a special mission. They meet Mr. Mercer, who runs Deluge Inc. Then he meets Theo, who is a powerful AI, and they are given a mission to go hunt down and kill a traitor, Sid Posner, who is Mercer's former partner. They talk a little bit about Mayday. Mercer says that's all Sid Posner's fault, and they're being given a shit ton of money, and also Michael doesn't have a choice because they'll kill his mother unless they go to California and go kill Sid. Also, Michael's sister Daisy is supposed to be out there, so that's also a reason he has for going there. And then we're on the road. We've left everything behind. One thing I did not understand is on page 96, Michael finds a pink AR-15, and he says he found the rifle a few days back. I don't know why they don't have guns, why they're not, like, kitted out, if I'm using that term correctly. I'm not really a gun guy. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, I understand that if they're wearing, like, full tactical gear or whatever, it would be, like, really obvious that these guys have something to do with Alex Mercer, so you don't want to do that. But the idea that they've been walking for a few days without any guns until he just happens to find an AR-15 is a little ridiculous. I don't know. I feel like they would have been given some kind of weapons. Like, I think the pink AR-15 is, like, it's a cute joke. Like, it's funny enough, but, like, maybe just have, like, a couple sentences where, like, they lost their guns crossing a river or something, and then they found this AR-15. Like, that would work, but it doesn't make sense that, like, and then they had no weapons whatsoever, and then thankfully they found one, I guess. Michael also thinks about his dad's suicide when they're, like, coming up with identities to tell people, because their plan is to join up with a caravan that's heading to California. Michael helps out a small boy who's being picked on by others. On 110, they're waiting in line for goop. They're in the slop line. First thing I tasted in this life was goy slop. No breast milk for White Pill Media. It was just straight formula for me. I never really lived. I never had a chance. Could have been somebody. Joe is the leader of their convoy who's heading to the PSR, which is the Pacific States Republic. I think that's what it is. On 114, it's noted that a old man has a sword that's sheathed. And I did question this, like, where, like, there's a lot of drone warfare going on and everything, and I just don't know if I believe that guns are kind of rare, just because, like, there would have been a shit ton of guns even before, like, before Mayday or whatever. And since America's in a perpetual state of warfare right now, I think guns would be a hot commodity. Like, other countries who hadn't been really affected by this Mayday would have been selling them to the Americans for whatever, you know, for anything. Convoy, they're heading out west on foot. Some people are in wagons. And then that night, some of the disheartened walkers decide to break off and steal a car. They kill a guard, and their SUV barely makes it before it gets annihilated by a drone. And then on 127, they're having this funeral service. And Joe speaks about their new home. A experiment in racial, economic, and sexual harmony awaits us past the Rocky Mountains. The fascist drones fly above our heads and destroy anything moving faster than snail's pace. Yeah, and about like the drone and gun thing on 132, I had a note that, like Cleveland, it was stocked full of Canadian beer and whiskey paid on the tab of PSR. So if Canada is able to export alcohol, why can they not make guns? Why can they not make bullets? Why is it kind of a rarity or whatever? Also, people don't like him in the caravan, and he gives this good autistic speech on 136 because Donahue tells him he's got to try to be charismatic. He says, I know that I appear strange and distant, that I act in strange ways that don't mesh with what is considered normal behavior. He had their attention now as all knew what he was talking about. Naturally, this would raise suspicions, and if there were someone else here who acted as I did, I would consider them a threat too, but I am not a threat. I'm on a mission. I like that. The book doesn't have like a lot of like action sequences, right? We're kind of done with the action part, and now we're just kind of walking. We're getting to know people. We're getting some characterization of the caravan. We get some backstory on 151, 152, we have Abe and Prudence, who are an Amish couple. They talk about after the electricity went away, people started showing up, and they took them in. They taught them how to farm and everything. Then the army came. They stole the young men from the community to force them into service. And then they violated the women, and they stole everything and burned shit down. Prudence started rubbing a small bump in her midsection on 152. We'll get back to this, don't worry. Joe talks more about the PSR in 154. Behind the front lines, cars can be purchased by a household so long as there are enough members of a household to fit the vehicle. Carpooling is mandatory, and you'll be levied a heavy fine if you're caught with less than a full vehicle. He trailed off. That's a good little bit. Jose, who's with the PSR, reveals that he was a Marine, and he knows that Michael is a rep. He also is stuck. He can't turn off, wishes that he had been killed on the day where he got fucked up. There was an explosion, and he just hasn't been able to shut off since then. Apparently, the Pacific States Republic got some assistance from the Chinese. Then we're in Nebraska now, and Prudence, our Amish woman, is giving birth. Our Amish woman who is violated is giving birth. Let me finish. The birth is going badly. Michael runs to get some linens. Prudence is dead by the time he returns. The baby's not dead, though. Page 203. He was stiff, unused to tenderness of any sort. He resigned his lot in life to the taking of human life, not in bringing it into the world, and for once he felt a warm sensation thinking about the idea that he'd added to the world rather than taking something away from it. There was no emotion, just raw physicality, but he'd take it. It was the first inkling of a feeling he'd had in years, a major accomplishment in his mind, and Prudence is dead. Prudence was fighting to bring her child into the world. The baby will be joining her soon. It's too small, never had a chance. Just keep reading. I have to read some excerpts. What about Abe? I was going to wait till after. Why? The man would want to meet his own son, especially if he's not going to make it. Mom fiddled with the towel, and Michael understood her hesitance at once. The baby's bald brown head poked through. Very nice. Very nice. Awesome. We have a... I don't think I should say that word in YouTube videos anymore, so I'm not going to say that word, but we have a brown rape baby. So that's wonderful. Abe's excited when he comes in, but then he sees Prudence, and he's all sad. Michael tries to say that the baby's not his, but Abe says, that's mine, that's my son. They're going to bury Prudence and also the rape baby. And I'm going to keep saying rape baby. I'm sorry if that's annoying, but it is a rape baby. That's what it was. Prudence was violated. She was gang raped. And then she died giving birth to this brown little monster. Personally, I would love to take T.R. Hudson to a Bruins game.
There's a friend of mine calls to tell me he can't go to the Bruins tonight. So why don't you forget your troubles and come to the game with me? Huh? I'll have a little dinner. I'll take the night off. We see a good game. Blackhawks. What do you say? I have a little wine, good steak. Then we go to the game.
Right. You're right. Look, I got a few things to do. I'll catch you back here about 6, okay?
Okay.
The baby's dead, but Warren Walker addresses this problem very early on in his book, so it's not really a spoiler, in a swift manner in The Path of Lightning. His mom, who was there trying to save Prudence's life, I seen the look when you saw that baby, like new life was breathed into you too. You might not admit it because you're a stupid man like him, but you might need this too, idiotic sex that you are. Because this brown rape baby that kills Prudence was life. It was magical. It was beautiful even. I thought this was pretty fucking disgusting. Abe on 208 says that he knows that the boy wasn't his blood, but he was ours. He was going to be raised as one of us. That's great. Maybe even the last Amish, but one of us all the same. I'm now Cuckoo Bird, but there are some things more important than my pride. We were going to name him Gabriel. I think Job would have been more appropriate, wouldn't you? And then we have the burial where a wooden cross is made and their names are carved into it, and they are buried in the same grave. Joe says their lives, though short, were mired in great suffering, but also great love. The love of devoted husband and father, the love of devoted community, the unbreakable love between mother and child, and the love of their true home. I question if there was a fucking joke. I thought maybe T.R. Hudson really fucking hated Christians or something. I believe he is a Christian. But I thought this was a fucking joke at first. So this was a rape baby. This was a brown rape baby that killed Prudence. So not only was she gang raped, she was forced to carry this parasite in her for several months. And then it literally killed her when she gave birth to it. It literally killed her when she gave birth to it. This wasn't a beautiful thing. This wasn't a magical thing. This wasn't new life. This was the genetics of a brown monster, and this half-breed thing was going to be raised by these white Christians. It's disgusting. It broke the fucking book for me. I really couldn't believe what I was reading. I was genuinely shocked when I read this. And then not only did this woman have to suffer the humiliation and the brutality of gang rape, but the baby then kills her, and then she has the indignity of spending the rest of eternity in a grave being buried with the thing that fucking killed her. That's what happens. That's literally what happens. I thought that maybe this was a parody, but it's not. It's played straight. And it's wow, Michael felt a little something about a baby being born. Why would you feel anything about a rape baby being born and then killing this woman? Why would you feel anything about that? Why would you feel anything positive about that? What an insult. Imagine, if you had a woman in your life, wife, sister, daughter, whatever, raped, get an abortion, but let's say that's not an option, and then this rape baby kills her in the delivery, and then you decide you're going to bury this thing with that woman forever. Oh, man, it can't get worse than that. Holy fucking shit, dude. Holy fucking shit. I could not believe what I was fucking reading here, man. This is insane. This is fucking insane. Am I wrong? I don't know if other people have read Automaton or not, but am I misinterpreting this scene or not? I don't think I am. This is just literally what happens. This is what literally fucking happens. I don't get it. I don't fucking get it. Yeah, I mean, let's say we cut this stuff out. I still think Automaton's just an okay book. Not great or anything, but decent. It's fine. But with this, it's just God fucking damn, right? God fucking damn. What the fuck is this shit? And Automaton's almost over. We're at the last 30 pages of it. And was it just me, or did everyone else drink a whole bottle of Brut champagne while trying to read the last 30 pages? Michael feels almost human around their campfire. Spots a little farm, and then Joe, who's angry and feels humiliated, calls in a drone strike and blows them up, and then a counter strike is called. and blows them up. Michael kills a boy at the little farmstead by mistake. It was just a reaction. And then the chapter after, he's burying everyone in the caravan. Everyone's dead. Jose makes him promise to die like a man on 226, like not a robot. Donahue is alive, and Michael could kill him here and now and do a good thing, like one good fucking thing in his life, and he doesn't do it. Donahue is a sadist. He is a rapist. He's an irredeemable monster, and Michael doesn't do the correct thing and put Donahue down. So I don't really give a fuck about Michael or any of that. He kills Joe, who's still alive. He becomes human through this because he remembers like his little talk phrase. And then we have our epilogue. He's using an alias. He's in the PSR. He finds his sister Daisy. They have a little scene together. And then he finds Sydney in this little work camp hiding away. Sydney has made a new computer AI thing called Charlie. And Michael says, I've seen a man turned into a machine. I need to believe that that a machine can be turned into a man. Whatever. Like, I don't really give a shit. I don't care. He's like back to normal. He's human again. Do I want him to succeed? Not really. All the human connections he made are gone. He's this blank slate, essentially. Is that enough? He has his humanity back. I don't know if it was worth it. It's that one scene, like, oh my God. I'm sorry I'm going to keep bringing it up, but I legitimately can't fucking believe that. It absolutely tanks the whole fucking book. Like, there's no question that just destroys the entire book. And now we're on to The Perfect and the Wicked. This is also by T.R. Hudson. This is a non-recommendation. The book is essentially an alternative history for the Kennedy family. It mostly follows actual history, but there are noticeable differences. Notably, T.R. Hudson makes the family look a lot better. Our main character is John Kennedy Sr. They are called the Rileys in this. And names are played around with. I'm not really sure why, what the point was. We know who he's talking about when he's talking about like FDR or Lyndon B. Johnson or other figures. They have their names changed. I don't really see the point of it. Whatever. But we open up with a young John Kennedy Sr. We follow him around as a young boy, and the book goes all the way through to the point of his death. I think you'll do fine if you know very little about the Kennedys. I don't know too much myself, and I was fine. But just going in with the knowledge that this is a book about the Kennedy family, you're going to have to bring your biases or your undue praise towards that family along with you. You could say I have a Cromwellian attitude towards the Kennedys. I strongly hate them. And this book is a shine job for the family. T.R. Hudson is here to dutifully brush their legacy, polish their noble name. And to that I say,
now go home and get your fucking shine box. Motherfucking
sweep it up, Janny. Shall we begin? I don't know all of the Kennedy lore, so bear with me, but I know Kennedy Sr. was like involved in bootlegging, and we start with a poor Irish family, the Rileys. John is the oldest son who looks out for his brothers. His father is a drunk who works for a mobster named Mr. Shannon. The dad throws a lot of money around, never brings it back home, but he throws it around. He gets killed, and John starts working for Mr. Shannon at the end of this little prologue. We have a time skip. World War I has been over for 6 years. His brother Patrick is dead from the war, and his brother Peter came back from the war, and he's not well. John's doing a mission for Mr. Shannon. He's delivering whiskey to a governor. He thinks this is going to be his big power play, his way of moving up in polite society. And then when he goes to the party and he delivers the goods, he gets embarrassed by the governor when he's dismissed. We have another time skip of a couple of years. Now he's in the position to insult and turn the governor away when the governor's asking him for favors. He spends time with his family. He has several kids. There's only one daughter, Rosie. His wife is Rose. There's mob stuff going on. Mr. Shannon, he's out of the picture. Canino is now like heading the Italians, and he's a bigger fish. And also his mother has been killed by his messed up brother, so they have to work to cover that up. Rosie, his daughter, is acting up a lot, embarrassing the family. She's a little off mentally. There's Van Horn, who is our FDR. He has him run for the mayor of New York just to split the vote, and it really screws up John Sr. when he does it. Oh, and then we have these kind of little aside chapters. John Sr., he owns a small baseball team. We get a couple chapters with this, and they aren't badly written. I kind of like them, but they are rather disconnected from the rest of the book. We have a little character named Kid, who's a baseball player, manager, and they have some interaction. It's just something that John has on the side, but yeah, it doesn't really touch anything else. John and his family, they keep rising through the ranks. Rosie keeps embarrassing him, getting kicked out of schools, getting in trouble, all this type of stuff. John's doing work for the government. He's helping to name and identify communists. Oh, and he's had a driver named Daniel. And then one night when Rosie's a young woman, he finds Daniel in bed with Rosie. And then he kills Daniel in the heat of the moment, and Rosie is taken away to undergo a new operation. Also, she claimed that Daniel got her pregnant. He says this on 110. Instead, an unpleasant doctor with a new method of pacifying wayward youths was called, paid handsomely, and had to orderly sedate and take away the now manic Rosie. His two sons, Peter and Patrick, get into a risque situation with a girl at their college. And at the end of that chapter on 123, Patrick asks about Rosie. He says that Rosie's not well. Surgery may be on the table. John knows that his daughter would never be able to see the rest of the family for the foreseeable future. And on 131, we have a nice little baseball chapter where where Kid has Riley go in uniform and he bats. He doesn't get a hit. And John gets struck out, but it's a really nice little scene. Kid just wanted Riley to live out his dream because he didn't get to keep going, because he had to drop out of school to work for Mr. Shannon, so he didn't get to play baseball. So this is nice. I don't know if it totally fits, but I think it's a well done chapter. But on 133, we get more information on Rosie. This is really the last of the Rosie stuff. Oh, because it turns out his daughter was actually pregnant and had a son, and they decided to name the son Daniel, and his wife Rose, they're going to pretend that Daniel was their baby. He says Rose was delirious during delivery, or so the doctor said. Her procedure and its consequences made it so that she was unable to bond with the child nor even recognize herself in him. Rosie has had the procedure, and she's going to be at the hospital forever. The details of Rosemary Kennedy's lobotomy magically don't appear in this book, but I'll discuss it. I don't know why T.R. Hudson would leave this out. I can't imagine. Anyways, when Rosemary Kennedy was being given her lobotomy, the doctors made her recite the Lord's Prayer as they cut into her brain, and they made her keep saying it as they were cutting until she was incomprehensible. Then they knew they'd cut far enough. Personally, if I was a rising political guy and I had this embarrassing child, do you have the money to keep her away in some place, some isolated place like a farm or a hospital, whatever, and give her 24-hour care, right? That would have been fine. But this lobotomy was monstrous, and I don't believe the Kennedys when they say, oh, no, that's not really what we wanted to happen. It's well, you got the results you wanted. Rosemary became a fucking vegetable. So they got what they wanted in the end. And T.R. Hudson, she had a procedure. Oh, she wasn't well. We just kind of gloss over some of these details. We just polish them away. And then World War II was on, and John Jr., who he wanted to be president, is killed. His son Patrick becomes a Republican in California. We have more time skips. Colin, who is the stand-in for Ted Kennedy, is in the army during Korea, but he's only serves in Europe, doing nothing. T.R. Hudson has changed this. Now our darling Ted goes against his father's and his family's wishes, and he joins the fighting in Korea. I will speak more on Ted Kennedy later. I have much to say. I don't know why T.R. Hudson would want to paint Ted Kennedy or Colin as this kind of war hero when he absolutely wasn't. and he does some stuff later on that we'll get into, but T.R. Hudson wants to make sure he's shining bright for all of us. Oh, and on 204, so Rose has died, John Sr.'s wife, and he reflects on how he never stepped out on her. He rarely looked at other women, and only a passing glance. This is demonstrably untrue. He was not a faithful husband. He was a serial adulterer in real life. This has also been changed. Oh, and then poor little Ted comes home from the war, and he's all shook up, and it's all very, very sad. Peter is to be the Democrat nominee for president. They pull a fast one, and I believe it was Robert Kennedy. He was John Kennedy's campaign manager. And in this one, when they're doing the rally or whatever, Peter names his brother Patrick as vice president, so they completely undercut the Lyndon B. Johnson stand-in. We have a speech from Peter on 245. If they could band together, every minority in this country, every black, every Jew, every Catholic, they could win and make it so there was fair shake for every American. Of all Peter's speeches, this was the one that drew headlines. So John is against it, but it's like a soft condemnation of John Kennedy's actual policies in real life. Look, in real life, JFK, definitely not our guy. He was a progressive. He was a very strong progressive. He wasn't maybe that open at first, but he wasn't against these progressive ideals. He was pro it. I think he was the one who federalized the Alabama National Guard to force school integration, and I think he forced integration at a few other parts. Obviously, he's also the president that started the Civil Rights Act. He died before it could be passed, and then Lyndon B. Johnson forced it through. But still, he planted the seeds. He was not against it. He never spoke up being pro people having freedom of association and like that. So he's absolutely not our fucking friend. I think it was 1962, he forced integration of some schools, but yeah, it's kind of like when people glorify someone like Reagan. And how many illegals did Reagan give naturalization to? A lot. Whenever people bring up this guy, whatever, it's cool. They were not pro us, right? John goes to Canino for help with the election. Peter ends up winning, and John gets shuffled off in the background. He gets brought back during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He lies to his son about being a veteran and such because he had to adopt this whole fake backstory to pass in public society, that he went to this good university, that he was in the war, that type of thing. Peter is still killed in Dallas, and Patrick becomes president. Patrick wants the truth from his dad, and John has this whole speech about it was necessary to lie. I always wanted the best for my family. I would do anything to see you rise, blah, 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 that type of thing. And then John Kennedy Sr., he has a stroke, and he dies. That's it. I read it, and I have to ask, why write this fan fiction? This alt-telling of the Kennedys that only really lifts them up. There's nothing really too bad about them. We had plenty of the perfect. I didn't really get to see any of the wicked. I had one last thing I wanted to discuss. So, in real life, John Kennedy Sr., he dies on November 18th, 1969. I mention this because of what Ted Kennedy did between July 18th and 19th of 1969. Kennedy Sr. would have been alive for this, but is not in the book. Another fun little detail that T.R. Hudson forgot in his alt history of the Kennedys. This night is known as the Chappaquiddick Incident. Incident is such a nice euphemism. I hate the Kennedys so much. They're all disgusting people. That night, Ted Kennedy, he is driving with a young woman, Mary Jo Kopechik, in his car. He drives his car off the road into a pond. Ted Kennedy saves himself. He swims free and leaves Mary Jo in the car. He claims that he tried to save her from the then flipped over and submerged car, but he couldn't. I think this is perhaps a lie where he blames the tide being too strong for him to reach her, but yet he was able to free himself and swim to shore just fine, but he's not able to reach the car and get her out. But we'll move on from that. He also failed to report the crash to the police until 10 a.m. on Saturday. The crash happened, I think they give some estimates between like 11 p.m. and like midnight or so on July 18th to 19th. He really waits to report this accident. Kennedy doesn't do a day in jail for this. Not one. He claims he tried to swim to her 7 or 8 times. Then he went back to the party. He didn't tell anyone except for a few close friends. These guys claim they all went out there and tried to rescue her, but they couldn't do it. I have some doubts to this. And then Ted Kennedy went to his hotel. He changed. His friends lie about Mary Jo being back at her hotel. Mary Jo Kopechik did not drown. She suffocated. She could have easily lived if there had been a speedier rescue. If they had contacted the authorities immediately, there's a very good chance that Mary Jo could have survived that night. And Ted doesn't do a fucking day in jail. Knowing all of this, why would T.R. Hudson make Ted Kennedy a Korean War hero? Why? But White Pill, this book is about John Kennedy Sr. and the Kennedy family, not about Ted. It would have been too much at the end. There was no time. And yet, there was time for 3 fucking baseball chapters, maybe 4 baseball chapters. This is a polished job. There are only a few things that could happen that would make me turn on blood, and something like this is one of them. Like, think about the Kennedy family itself and how they all knew he left this woman to die, and they said nothing about this publicly because all they want is money and all they want is power. Imagine there's a building on fire that you set the fire on this building, and you brought this woman into the building, and then you set it on fucking fire. You run out, you save yourself, and you leave the woman inside. And it's even worse than that. You stand outside and you watch it burn as she's screaming and begging for someone to save her. Mary Jo, she's pounding on the glass, she's crying, and he's there on the shore and he's watching, and then he makes the conscious decision to walk away. He didn't try to save her, and his actions show that. He murdered her. He could have gone to the cops, would have been really fucking bad and a huge embarrassment, yes, but she would have been alive. And Ted Kennedy served in the United States Senate from 1962 to 2009. You don't hate politicians enough. Frankly, I just don't really have anything positive to say about this jerk-off of a book for the fucking Kennedy family. They're all pieces of shit. They're all fucking scum. Even like the quote-unquote good ones were never good. I don't think there's any political dynasty in the United States that I would view as like great. Definitely not the Bushes, not the Clintons, not the Kennedys for sure. They all seem like pretty fucking evil. Just knowing the truth, and then you just get this where it's like, okay, the Kennedys, sometimes they do some bad adulterous things, but ultimately, aren't they our guys? Like, sure, like, I guess you could have written a book about, like, you know, the American dream, these Irish immigrants, they're trying to rise through the ranks, they go from bootleggers to in the White House. Isn't that a story? You could have shown the good and the bad of the family, but really, it's just the good. It's just really the good. Yeah, so I thought the book was a lot of bullshit. It's the Perfect and the Wicked. I think I hate this more than Automaton. Just because of Ted Kennedy. Just because of Ted Kennedy, it's that fucking bad. I don't know how you justify that. You know, I don't know how you fucking justify that. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, he just made the conscious decision, I am walking away. This woman is going to die because of my choice. And I don't care. That's all I have to say there. Sorry for the little rant. The Living Hypnotic Death by Arbogast. This is a collection of tales and essays by Arbogast. I'm going to spend a little time on each, but there is a lot to cover, and this is a longer trough, so I can't go into like extreme detail for each little story. I apologize, but I'm going to try to focus on the ones that I really liked. I really do enjoy the cover. We have a lot of really good covers. This trough, we got like an eagle. I think it's holding like a pair of eyes. They're like some women with a blanket. It's snowing. There's a bell. It looks good. I don't know exactly what it all means, but it looks good. But this collection is truly excellent. And I will say, I believe that this is the best that this Trough has to offer for me. And a question you might have is, if you've already read a good deal of his stuff, is this worth your time, your money? Yes, it is. I've actually only read 2 of these before, The Algorithm and Necropolis of Styles. The rest of it was all brand new to me, so that was nice. He does have a previous anthology, Emperor on the Mountain. You can also check that one out as well. I covered it on a previous Trough. I enjoyed it. This is a really solid jumping on point if you've never read anything about Arbogast before. Okay, now we begin. So Arbogast, he's written for Terror House, Archives, Apocalypse Confidential, Double Dealer, Man's World Magazine, Man's World Magazine. I've never read this myself, but I've heard so much about it. You know what I love about Man's World Magazine? It's full of men. Speaking of Man's World Magazine, they really know how to put the man in man's world. All right, that's enough. But I will say, I've never really looked at Man's World before, but I saw of the cover for Man's World issue 2. I'm just saying, nothing against Arbogast, nothing against people who have maybe read Man's World, but it's a little, you know what? You look at that cover and you decide for yourself, right? Like, I'm just saying, look at that cover for the second issue. I'm just saying. Our first story is Dig 2 Graves. This is about an ugly bastard named Wayne Delano Jones, who's one of the world's ugliest men, and he is working as a heavy for this movie. Before this, he worked as a wrestler for a time, and he starts to fall for the actress here, Sharon Silverwood. She is the beauty for the movie. There's also another heavy named Kolb, who is a drunk. He hates communists. Sharon also hates communists, so that's great. And everything is good. They drink together. They have fun after shooting for the day. But then Sharon goes for a shoot in Mexico, and a woman posing as her returns and claims that she's Sharon Silverwood, and she's not. Wayne can't let this go, but he's forced to finish the movie. And then after the movie wraps, he works odd jobs around until he starts working under a private eye. One day he gets sent a snuff film that looks like it was filmed in Mexico, and it reminds him of Sharon Silverwood. And he's on the trail to find out who made it. He's going around, he's pursuing leads for the company that actually made the movie that he was filming with Sharon, and all their connections, and it leads him down to Mexico. And we got some bad hombres down there, so he's in a shootout with some evil Mexican cops, and then he limps his way back home where his PI boss is dead, and Sharon is there. She managed to save herself back in the day because she was going to be killed on camera for a snuff film, and she hired a cameraman so she would have blackmail. And now that she had blackmail on them, she was saved, and a different girl was killed in her place, and now she worked for their snuff film. Wayne is able to get the drop on her and kills her, and then he's just on the run after this. He's just kind of a sad drunk that moves around avoiding the cops. And this was great. I thought this was a really solid start to the collection. Necropolis of Smiles, I covered this when I reviewed Archives 6. This has Cultists, a sensitive young man, and an older professor. They're discussing weird folk tales about this place near them that's really creepy. I like it. It's a little culty. Then we have our namesake, the living hypnotic death. We have 2 drunks, and one of them, Charlie, says that he has died before and come back to life. He recounts his tale of being a carny and how he eventually became a living corpse exhibit. Basically, he would look dead behind this glass casket. He would have this little secret breathing tube, and people would just come and gawk at him, and he just couldn't move. So people would be like, oh my God, he's dead. But then one day, because he slighted his boss in the past, and his boss held a grudge for a very long time, he tries to kill him, and his boss sealed up his breathing tube. Charlie saw flashes of hell, which he never really thought about that, hey, maybe these weren't just illusions. Maybe I was actually going to hell, because Charlie's not the best guy. He's not evil, but he's not a good person. And then, the 2 drunks, they clear out for the day, and they promise that they'll meet again tomorrow to drink and watch baseball. This is a solid one as well. The Priory. We have National Guardsmen, a professor, the leaders of a small town, the mayor. They all gathered together to discuss some strange new sightings going on. I liked this little bit on page 107. This is about the professor, Hartzell K. Wilkins. He's 5 feet 5 inches tall with a wild and uncombed mane of dirty blonde hair. Wilkins looked at life from behind a pair of moon-shaped eyeglasses. His students snickered behind his back about his close resemblance to Harry Potter, with some calling the pudgy older man Harry Pot Roast. That's nice. Around their little town, some human-sized frogs have been spotted and go out there to investigate some Native American burial mounds. They think that maybe some Egyptians thousands of years ago came to America and they built these earth pyramids, and there's something going on there. And they split off. Their professor has been hearing voices, and he sacrifices himself. He goes into the mound, and then he goes into this boiling little pond because his evil voice tells him to. And then there's the big frog people. They're having a sacrifice on a city street, and the National Guard attacks, and they win in the end. But then the story ends with the old god laughing, so who knows how it's going to go. Deaths a Living. This is about a future where people can sign up to be killed through an app. The app would contact an agent, and this person would come over and they would kill you. We have a good line on page 129. On his last few jobs, Richard tried to talk the clients out of it by reading scripture to them. Some of these clients used their last moments on Earth to give Richard 1-star reviews. That's a very nice line. But this house that he's going into, it's all locked down. They're supposed to leave a door open for him, so he's a little frustrated, but he gets inside, and when he does get inside, he finds 2 dead girls that have been poisoned, a husband who's been stabbed to death. He's trying to understand what happened, but then he questions why he should care. The wife is dying next to the husband, but she screwed up her suicide, so that's why she used the app to ask for someone to finish the job for her. He has a few theories about what happens, did the wife poison the girls first and then stab the husband to death, or kill the husband first and then the girls? But then he's why does it matter to me? And I understand that our character doesn't care. He's just, this is a part of his daily routine. He only is here to make money, drink beer. But there is an issue with, if our main character doesn't care, then why do we care, right? If they're not invested in the story, then we are not invested in the story as readers. I understand the point is he doesn't care, but it's a little I don't know. Emanation Machine. I did not really like this one. We are in a fantastical Egypt with a pharaoh. I think there's just a bit too much going on in here with just the Hierophant. We have different countries, Labarna. We have the priestly class, and they have inner dramas. Nilarthotep. There's just a bit too much world packed into this story because it's not a terribly long story. But maybe if it was expanded into something, I'd like it a little more. We have 2 Egypt stories. We have Emanation Machine, and then we also had the Priory. I don't know. It's a little odd, which is fine. Sin Eaters. We have Joe, newspaper reporter. He's looking into a small town during Prohibition for dirt. He's just looking for a scoop. This beautiful woman sits down and tells Joe to follow her for a story. He sees some strange signs painted on barns as they go. She gives a little backstory about Dutch voodoo magic and some of the town's history. And then they go to this huge prayer tent where people are mutilating themselves for their sins. And since he and the woman had just had sex outside of marriage, the last thing he sinned with is his well. So he flees. And then we end there. He also runs over an old woman who maybe she was evil. She was at the prayer tent too. So she was probably bad. So it's fine. And that's where we end that one. Return of the Old Mysteries. We're in a dwindling town in the Rust Belt. And our main character has seen a strange symbol that piques her curiosity. There's this new libertarian party that's taking shape. They're decriminalizing drugs, sex work, tax cuts for cannabis dispensaries, drinking. And then one night, our main character gets stuck in a snowstorm and she calls for a tow, but some men show up and they help her get out, but then one of the men gropes her. I did not realize our main character was a woman at this point. I don't think it was really mentioned before this, and I'm like, is this the first time Arbogast has written like a woman POV? I don't know. It was a little odd. But she wants to report the crime. The police said there's probably not much they can do because the town has been like a haven for illegals, so the odds of them finding and convicting someone is basically nothing. The symbol, turns out it's from Dionysus. We get some cool backstory where apparently Dionysus was like an Eastern god to the Greeks. He wasn't like a part of the original like Greek pantheon, so he's like the god of foreigners and drinking and revelry and that type of thing. She goes to meet with like the safety committee counselor or whatever to report the crime, and they just keep giving her like drinks and drugs. Ends up falling in with all these people as they're just walking around town. We have one of them on 203 where we also learn that our main character, who's a woman, she's also a POC woman. We didn't know that, but she is. Going around town, they're drinking. More people join them, just degenerates, homeless people, criminals. The mayor, the libertarian mayor, is a high priest, and their political rival has been tied up with his family, and then they sacrifice them. After that, it's kind of a blur, and then we have a time skip for 2 years later where our main character is kind of recovering with her parents, and I liked how this was written. You know, I think the story is pretty solid. I will say, though, it kind of has a Dragon Day issue with me where it's like I don't really care about Charles too much because, look, I don't know, he's a homosexual man. I don't really care about what happens to him. And with this, I think the story's solid. I enjoy it well enough, but she is like just this non-white woman, so it's like, why do I care exactly? You know? So there's a little bit of that. The algorithm, I've already covered this in Double Dealer. It's good. A man, he moves into a new home and his electronics start to come to life kind of on their own. They're playing music. He's being haunted by an ex-girlfriend who committed suicide. It's very good. Bucklew case, we have a man, Jay Pounder, who he doesn't sleep. He works for an insurance company in a, well, I don't know if I would say crappy little town. It's a little town, okay? Being assigned to the Bucklew case. And Albert Bucklew is like a little local legend. He's like an oddball. He's just a weird guy, and he wants insurance to set up like a daycare at his house. So it's like, hey, you're in charge. Just make sure. You're going to have to do like an on-site visit, but you have to make sure you just fail Bucklew so we don't have to give him insurance. Okay, so he goes to the Bucklew house. There's a fat kid and then some old lady just watching TV. They move past that into this little kitchen. It's just everything is very cluttered and dirty and gross. There's a really good job done with just like describing the clutter of this house. Oh, and in the kitchen there are 2 large kennels covered by tarps. And he could tell that the kennels are occupied, but neither animal inside made a sound. So he's looking into one of the kennels when Mr. Bucklew pulls him away. And he says, you shouldn't get too close. What type of dog is she? She's something unusual, a mix, one of a kind, very creepy. And then Bucklew says that he plans to have the daycare set up in the basement, which is just super. The basement is disgusting. It's a disturbing little basement that smells strongly of water damage. There's some kids' books set up. And then there's this separate room that smells rotten and sulfuric. And he goes into that room. Bucklew says that something did die in that room. You did. And then is told you can't avoid sleep. You have to sleep. Pounder sees a ventriloquist dummy with the missing eye move a little bit. And then he just gets the hell out of there. And after that, the people at his insurance company find him dead at his desk. And his eyes are covered by sticky notes. Creepy and good. To Sing to the Love of Danger is our last one. A man named Keller had a dream of a plane, the X-76 Ultra Crane. It's being abandoned. So He decides he's going to start a war by going to Taiwan with bowling, and their plan is to like force a war just so their plane doesn't get scrapped. Yeah, I thought this was all right. It's them flying to Taiwan, and then they like shoot some people when they get there just to kick off the conflict. So I thought this one was like an all right one. We're on to the essay portion of the book. The first essay is 10-Cent Americanism. It is a long history of pulp magazines, which is very detailed and well-researched. If you have like any interest in the pulps at all, I think this is well worth your time. I don't really know any of this stuff. In Arbogast, he touches on Americanism and how Americanism has changed. And they talk about different forms of Americanism being like rugged individualism, being part of like kind of New Deal liberalism, and they're all kind of connected by individualism. That's kind of the one thing they all have in common: the individualism of the superior aristocrat, the individualism of the Coney Island gumshoe, and the individualism of the liberty-loving hero. Pulp Americanism is a centrism of competing ideals, but a complete concept nonetheless. It's informative, it's long, but you do learn a lot. So yeah, 100% recommend this one. And then we have Bar Stories 1, 2, 3, which is Arbogast reflecting on times that he's been at bars and such, and just being with friends and trying to meet women at bars, and the ebb and flows of that, going out and not really talking to anybody and just staying with your friend, and then you return home and kind of just repeating these rituals, hoping for different results. But you kind of have to go through the motions. You're forced to. You tell yourself tonight will be different, and it almost never is. But still, I creep around and take slings and arrows from random heels. It is far from ideal, but it's the life that I have. The second Bar Stories, we're talking about visiting strip clubs. Safe to say it did not go well. I myself have not been to a lot of strip clubs. My brother took me to one when I was in college. We were out in some state, which will not be named, but it had a lot of cornfields, and I'm not exaggerating. We literally like went out into there was a shit ton of cornfields, but there was a strip club out there, and we went in the strip club. There were only 3 women there. There was no other people. It wasn't great, and had to pay $20 for her to dance for a 3-minute song. I'm $20 for 3 fucking minutes? Are you joking? What the hell? It's really expensive, kind of just gross and pathetic, and I don't know. I didn't really make it a habit. I just don't like it. I guess maybe for the money aspect of it, but there is just something about it where this is gross. This is kind of seedy. Talk about that. Going around to a couple strip clubs, not having a very good time, the fake shyness of the strippers, the put on cuteness. Some people simply wanted the delusion of being wanted, feeling like he had descended down some kind of moral ladder. Yeah. And after a failed evening of going around to strip clubs, he goes back to the same bar that he always goes to, and then he eats the same pizza slices that he always did. It was a million other Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights before it, except I did it alone. How pathetic, how loathsome, how humbling. Sulfate jumped up from below the floorboards and covered me in sores. Without the occasional bar crawl, I would sink into total hermitage, a non-entity, another antisocial creep, and given that that is what the lizard people seem to want, I want to say to hell with them, get soused. And our third one is him going out with a friend. They are kind of the older crowd now. There's this bartender, Madison, that he likes, but that doesn't go anywhere. And then there's Madeline, who is dressed all in black and looks like Anne Hathaway. Looks like she could be a stunt double, a gothic. And she's really nice, but Madeline seems a little more interested in his friend. That also doesn't go anywhere. And Arbogast reflects on being a townie nostalgia addict. I used to have sex every week. I used to be a contender. Do not mistake this for a pity party. The guy who used to be a player is the same hombre who made the 3 major mistakes that I'm still paying for and will probably pay for the rest of my life. I don't know if that's going to be in a future collection or not. Sounds interesting. The night can always be good, and just like life, you cannot know it until it's done. Sure, betting against disappointment and heartbreak is foolish, but some of us are born gamblers, melancholic gamblers, but gamblers just the same. So in that spirit, I'll wager the next drink is on me. These are all solid. We have liminal types and lowlifes. This is about some bad, fucked up people, but some of them are just kind of funny. He has an unholy three of people. One of them is Richard. Richard is like a mentally retarded guy who is like a serial masturbator that goes around town, and he's just fucking disgusting. He's pretty funny. We have Larry. Larry is not a good guy. He is rather an ugly guy who also tries to date rape people in town, specifically like young frat boys. We have this on 386. Some of you may be pulling back right now and wondering aloud why I am profiling such a villain. Yes, that is me. The answer is simple. Larry was the world's most incompetent date rapist. I still think this is like fucked up, and I feel like, you know what I mean? Like, he is trying. He is really, really trying to do some really evil shit. He's not successful with it, and it seems like the townspeople just try to steer people away. And I know because he's like trying to get people drunk and then drive them back, right? And then take advantage of them. And it seems like that never happens. But it's kind of one of those things where it's like, you kind of wish like the police or somebody would just get involved and put an end to this, because what if there's just one night where, oh, he got lucky? Like, I don't know. It's pretty messed up. And then we have Chipmunk Cheeks, who is a mentally imbalanced Asian woman who roams around the hometown. She is not a bad person, but she's just a little odd. She's just a little off, and people just kind of look out for her. And yeah, this is just a collection of 3 oddballs from his hometown. Next, we have the love song of Elliot Ness. Elliot Ness was with the Untouchables, the people who were like working against Al Capone, and this is about Dr. Francis Sweeney. And apparently Sweeney held and interrogated for many days, denied an attorney. A lot of illegal shit went down. But once all was said and done, they got Sweeney to commit himself to a mental hospital, and Sweeney would stay there until his death in 1965. The police believed that Sweeney was a serial killer, but they didn't have enough evidence to put him away. And the man that was responsible for this was Elliot Ness. So, yeah, it's just a little history on Elliot Ness and these crimes. It's interesting stuff. I liked it. The serial killer was called the Torso Killer. And we get some fucked up history about some enemy of Ness, the Sheriff O'Donnell, who arrested a man. And the 5'8" Dolezal had somehow hung himself from a hook that was 5 feet and 7 inches off the floor. An autopsy also revealed that Dolezal had died in O'Donnell's custody with 6 broken ribs. That's pretty fucked up. Then we have Ride Johnny Ride. This is about a band from New Jersey. I guess they're a punk rock band. I don't know like a lot about music. You know, I just don't. These guys are just like a bunch of Italians from New Jersey, and they play some songs. I guess one of their most famous songs is Bullet, which is about the Kennedys. Arbogast says this on 435. Sex, violence, and secrets were the true currency of the Kennedy White House. Camelot was a farce created by a sympathetic media. Very based. And yeah, we just get some history of the band there and this song. And then A Better Obituary. This is very strong. I would say maybe this is the most emotional of it. This is about someone Arbogast knew named Caleb, whose mother posted about her son's death on Facebook. He died in our garage. He hung himself. This is how she, a grieving mother, responded to an inquiry about a fundraiser for her son's funeral costs. The word so callous cut me like a linoleum knife. I knew Caleb, of course. That's why I was lurking at his Facebook page to begin with. But I cannot say that he and I were close. We just happened to share a few years in adolescence together. So he read that from Caleb's mother, and it made him feel really heartbroken for the guy. So he reflects on Caleb and their time together, and he just wants to do a better job. He wants to give a literal better obituary. He knew Caleb in middle school. They got paired up in like woodshop class. Caleb was probably a fucked up person where like Caleb had a detailed analysis of the effects of WD-40 on a canine's inner ear or eyeballs. Left no doubt that he spoke with firsthand knowledge. Arbogast thinks that Caleb was probably abused when he was a kid. He was prone to fits of anger. He had poor to non-existent social skills. He had a collapsed posture, which made him almost look hunchback. Indicated suboptimal self-esteem. He lashed out at authority figures. Caleb wanted to be loved and liked. He desperately wanted to be seen as anything other than the shabbily dressed and destitute trailer park trash that everyone saw him as. And then he only knew Caleb for a short amount of time, and then they drifted apart. He found Caleb years later on Facebook, and Caleb was doing like some live streams, and then he hops off once Caleb noticed his name and gave a shout out for agreeing with him. Apparently, Caleb killed himself not long after the new year while spending time with his extended family at their beachfront rental. He locked himself in the garage, tied a noose, and then leapt from consciousness to the beyond. And then a day later, his mother would tell the world as much online. Thus ended the sad life of Caleb. Talk about just not knowing much about Caleb's life. And maybe he did have a really shitty life, but suicide seemed like the solution, but it never is. He went to his grave early and unnaturally. He still had a lot of time to potentially change things around or whatever, right? But just ending it here and now, that's it, right? There's no do-over. There's no reset. And this is just his memory of Caleb. This is really good. This is definitely a better obituary than what his mother gave him. That's very, very callous of his family. And then we end with mall walkers inside the mall to study his favorite sociological subjects. Talks about this mall that just shut down over a period of years, and then elderly people started using it to walk around the mall. He likes the mall walkers because they keep moving, they keep exercising. The mall walkers remember life before the United States became the alien nation empire, a more localized nation with town pride and rooted connections. They still see private interpersonal drama as important, and like the dissolute mall they populate, they cling to the fraying social fabric because it makes the most sense to them. Instead of just like sitting inside and watching an endless amount of TV, they do mall walking. It's preferable to this. They are doing something rather than just doing an impotent rage. They are surviving. It calls it a final grasp to preserve the old ways against the onrush of new customs and new peoples. It will not last, of course, but nothing lasts. The point is to try to survive for as long as possible. The point is to harness nostalgia, which is so powerful today because our contemporary order really is awful and stuck and deadening, into something productive. The point is to keep walking. I thought this was a really nice one to end it on. I think it could have ended on a better obituary, but ending it on mall walkers, I think that works like well, that's a positive message. So yeah, this was an excellent collection. Arbogast knocks out of the park again. Might be, some Patrick Midnight coming out soon. Can't wait for Patrick Midnight and his Ghost GF. That's going to be great. We're all really looking forward to that. But there we go. The Living Hypnotic Death. 100% worth your time if you haven't read any Arbogast, or if you have read Arbogast. Really worth it. Minakai, Monster Tamer. This is by Jordan Allen. We have a lighthearted adventure story about a young man named Oren. He is an aspiring tamer. He is traveling to this tower where they have Minakai. Essentially, it's kind of a Pokemon-esque tale where he's like training to become like the best Minakai tamer in the world, and they have like battles with other tamers, that type of thing. I did enjoy it. It is a recommendation, but I did feel that it suffered a bit, especially more kind of in the later parts of the book where our characters aren't being proactive. Like, it just feels like some plot points just kind of happen, not really through them striving or working towards a goal. It just kind of like, oh, this is occurring now. It felt like it dragged a bit, I guess, in the second half. I will state, however, that this series, which I believe started on Royal Road, and that's typically like weekly chapter updates or like a certain amount of words you post a week kind of a deal. I will acknowledge that because this is like a Royal Road book, it probably won't flow exactly like a novel where you're just sitting down, you're writing the entire novel at once. I'm sure there was an outline and everything, but with a novel, you're not like having a weekly like chapter count or word count that you're trying to hit, So I think it makes a bit more sense that there's that type of pacing, but like, yeah, kind of like a lack of focus at parts. However, I would still read more about Minakai, Monster Tamer, and I'm interested in seeing where things are going. With this story being a Pokemon-esque tale, does it stand out from its inspiration? Somewhat. there'd be points where I would see where something would be in the book and be like, okay, I think I see what the inspiration is for that thing. But I think there was enough where it kind of stands its own two legs, but I guess I would have to read more to see if it kind of develops more into its own being. So we begin. We're in the town of Hazleton with Aaron and his reptile monster, Shamtile. It's like a little lizard thing that wears a mask, and it uses like earth powers. He is 15. There's a tower there, and towers in this world just kind of appear. They have treasure and Minakai inside and like eggs that you can hatch into Minakai, that type of thing. All right. So he enters the tower, which is actually like you open it and then there's like a little portal. You go through the portal, then you're in the tower. Think of it more like Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. You'll get the idea. He's going along and it seems fine at first, but then he gets knocked out by another. If all your Minakis get knocked out, then you get ejected from the tower. And he gets knocked out by this guy who says he's a member of the Zodiac Squad, and they seem to be bad people. He meets a girl named Luna who helps him and tells him that the Zodiac guys are part of a criminal gang. Oh, and another thing is, if you do get knocked out of a tower, you lose all your coins, eggs, and items that you've gathered. And this book is divided into 4 arcs. Our first arc is just a lot of setup. It's an introduction to the world. It's about gathering Minakai, climbing the tower, which changes each time you enter, and it's about training. There's not exactly a goal right now other than just training, getting stronger, exploring the tower, which is fine. I think that all works. They meet up with a man named Kyle who runs a ranch just outside of town, and Aaron starts living there. So it's a lot of him just going to the tower and training and exploring. He loses to a Zodiac guy named Leo. I am not going to cover each tower run in training, but that's what they're doing. That's really what this arc is. I do like the battles, and I think those are done well. Like, he encounters random Minakai in the tower and other Tamers in the tower and battles against them. And yeah, I enjoyed all the battles, really. I didn't feel that they were excessive. Oh, and I'll put this visual up on screen, but I really like this. This was very helpful for me, where at the end of each arc, you get a page where it lists out, like, here's Arn's team, and it has a little image of each of the Minakai he has, and then it also says Luna, his friend, and all of her Minakai. So I'm like, that's a nice little visual reminder. I don't know how crazy it gets, because I think there is more Minakai Monster Tamer that has been written, if like there are entire pages of like, here's all the Minakai he has. But I assume it gets crazier as it goes on. Okay, our second arc is the tournament arc. This is Arn, Luna, and a few of their friends signing up, and then we jump into the matches very quickly. And the prize for winning this tournament is like this super rare Minakai egg. So there's a lot of people there. There's also the Zodiac Squad there because they want the super rare Minakai. But I like this on 135, where after Arn has a match, there's a number of Petal Cubs, which are like grass dog Minakai. They run across the field repairing the grass at surprising speed, leaving it pristine once again. That was a nice little detail. And we get a little intrigue with Zodiac. One of them is Frederick, who's like a random trainer, and then maybe the mayor, or I thought perhaps the announcer is in on it too. We get this chapter of Frederick, and then since there's a Zodiac Squad, there's 12 like Zodiac things from like the Chinese Zodiac calendar or whatever, so there's like 12 of them, right? Tournament's going on. Luna gets knocked out. Arn has to go up against Gardner, who is a guy that likes grass Minakai. He beats him, and while the tournament has been going on, the Zodiac people have been robbing like losers in the tournament, like, and stealing their Minakai. So he and Gardner had enacted to a plan to bring a trap on the Zodiac Squad, which does not happen because Zodiac just shows up and they're just assaulting everyone, and Leo, who defeated Arn earlier in the tower, steals the rare egg and escapes with it. And then Arn has to face Frederick, who is Leo, in the tournament, and he loses to him. There's also a member of the police department who wants to help them, but he's being hamstrung by his boss and other members of the force who he thinks are corrupt. He says they're being told not to investigate certain leads. Evidence goes missing. He wants to help them, so they hatch this new plan. They end up following Frederick to a warehouse, which is where the Zodiacs are hiding out. They infiltrate the base. They release a bunch of stolen Minakai and learn that the Zodiacs are looking for something called Ithruki. It's a cosmic one, and we don't know why they want it. This is a question that I had throughout the book, but I took some notes on page 203. We didn't have the chance to, said Aaron. They're hunting for cosmic Minakai and using their silver from the tower and whatever black market money they can bring into blah, blah, blah. I had a question. What is the economy like in this world? So the towers also give out silver coins, and you can collect these silver coins and use them as currency in actual shops in the real world. So there's an infinite amount of silver coins. Would silver coins not become worthless in time? Is inflation not a thing in this world? What's the deal? I want to know. What is book 2? Minakai Monster Tamer, book 2, The Horrors of Inflation. Make me believe the economy. What is going on here? I'm joking. Let's not think about it, but an infinite amount of silver coins. And I love the Federal Reserve. I have to say that for legal reasons. I love the Federal Reserve. I love just printing money. So I guess if it works for the Federal Reserve, it works in this world too. I only have legal thoughts about the Federal Reserve. Let's not belabor the point. We're on to our third arc now. This is building a team. We have Aaron training Microbot, which is like a little steel Minakai that can like turn into something like really powerful. Minakai just don't like evolve like Pokemon. You have to have like the right stone for it, and then it evolves into a thing, which is all right. They're doing some tower runs. Oh, and there's a note that sometimes the tower is weird since like the floors change every time you enter, but sometimes it makes like anomalies where it's all just like a singular room and not like a maze of rooms. They have not seen Zodiac since they destroyed their warehouse and they've been gone. But on 242, it's been a minute, but they run into 2 Zodiac guys and they defeat them and they're ejected from the tower. And we're just doing a lot of training in this arc. We're building a team, as we said. On 271, that one detective from before, Detective Knott, says that there's been some activity located solely in Harmony Tower, at least a dozen incidents of Zodiac jumping Tamers and stealing eggs. No stolen Minakai directly this time, but they seem to be back to their pre-tournament modus operandi. And I'll bring this up in a second. And then Aaron's parents come to visit, and there's a birthday lunch. There's not a lot of plot, I would say, happening right now. It's just kind of like, well, training and such, but it's enjoyable. Like, I don't think it's done badly, but that's what's going on. And then on page 314, Aaron runs into Leo in the tower. Aaron beats him. And then on 319, Aaron says that their teams were growing both in number and in strength, and they felt ready for whatever the Zodiac squad would throw at them next. To me, it's been about 100 pages because our Arc 2 ends on page 218 and our Arc 3 ends on 320. So it's been about 100 pages since the tournament, since they took out the Zodiac warehouse, and they've run into 2 Zodiac guys in the tower. They've heard that Zodiac is doing stuff in the tower, and then they just ran into Leo now, about 100 pages after this arc began. It just feels a bit too passive for me that Zodiac really wants revenge on Aaron, but they're not taking proactive steps to do it. Also, that Aaron wants to defeat Zodiac and bring them down, but they're also not really doing much. It's more just like happenstance. Like, oh, we happen to run into 2 Zodiac thugs today instead of like pursuing them or like setting up a trap, something. Like, I felt they could just be doing more. Like, maybe have a stakeout out of the tower to check for Zodiac members or something. It feels like both Aaron and the Zodiac guys aren't really following through. Like, if Zodiac really does want revenge on Aaron, I feel like they would have done a lot more by now, because if they are like getting back into the swing of things, you would think that they would have made a move on Aaron, kind of. This is a funny scene on 322 where they get knocked out by 2 Frogger, and Kyle has some of these on his ranch. Aaron says, every time we walk past one of the Frogger guards of the ranch, he'll make a snide comment, Aaron, be careful, or something like that. Okay, yes, that does sound exactly like him, admitted Luna. That was nice. And our next kind of big moment is they accidentally run into a Zodiac elite called Sagittarius in the tower on page 339. Aaron says, there's a target on our back already after what we did at the warehouse. We need to find out if we can defeat them before they eventually ambush us. Zodiac may be biding their time now, focusing on their task, but they'll come for us eventually. Please trust me. So just my question is, and like several months have passed in the book since the tournament then and now. My main question is just like, why? Why is this occurring right now? Why isn't this happening sooner? Why has Zodiac made zero move against Aaron, who is a big enemy to them because he really hurt them? You could say that they're licking their wounds, but could Zodiac not have done some stuff before? Like stake out the tower waiting for Aaron to come in, or like they're waiting inside the tower to like ambush him on like floor 10 or something, you know what I mean? Or they lure them into the tower somehow, just like have them be more proactive, have Aaron be more proactive, because it just seems like, hey, we ran into Sagittarius. Oh yeah, we are against the Zodiac guys. You know what I mean? That's just kind of what it feels like to me. Oh, and Sagittarius is also trying to kill them. So if we're at the point where he's trying to like kill them, you would think that there would be like a stronger impulse to kind of hunt them down or track them down. I guess I need a little more going on, because it's been like 100 pages or so where we had just like two little Zodiac incidents and then we're here, right? This big escalation in like what Zodiac is doing. There were like little incidents between like the end of the tournament and now, then I would find it a bit more believable that like, hey, we are going to kill you. This guy's not just a little nuisance. We need to just take him out. They are able to escape from Sagittarius in the tower. Luna's staying away right now. She's just living with her parents because things are pretty dangerous. Aaron is told to stay out of the tower with Kyle, and he's just training at the ranch because they've decided it's too dangerous. But it's like, okay, why is this happening now? Why wasn't it too dangerous months ago after you just took out their warehouse? Well, it's unsafe for Aaron to go to the tower alone, but when he and Kyle go to the tower to train, that's fine. But one of the times when they go to the tower and come back, Zodiac is at the ranch. They've set fire to it. They're able to fight them off. It's Sagittarius and then another Zodiac elite, Libra. They go the police again, and it feels like a bit too easy of a reveal where Detective Scarlet, who's Detective Knott's partner, has a bandage on her hand, and also one of Aaron's Minakai was sniffing at her because he smelled smoke on her from the fire. So this felt like a bit too easy of a reveal. I would have liked it if they had to work a little harder to get this information, but they come up with a plan to expose Scarlet by breaking into her home to uncover evidence that she's Zodiac. Aaron wants to contact Leo because he believes that Leo is one of the more honorable members of the Zodiac squad, and he's not just kind of a common thug like some of the other people, so he wants Leo to help them bring down Libra. I think that I would have preferred if there was some suspicion around Scarlet earlier. Like if Aaron and Luna were just exploring the tower earlier and they ran into Scarlet and they're like, oh, Scarlet, what are you doing here? Oh, I'm just investigating. I'm looking out for Zodiac members, right? Like just little bits, like have Scarlet just here and there, and with her being a police officer, it would work for her being there, but maybe there's a little suspicion, like maybe her behavior's a little off, right? Of earlier brought their suspicions about her to Knott, and then Knott dismisses it because he trusts Scarlet, and then that trust is broken later on. It would add a little something, just because right now I feel like the unmasked Zodiac figure could have been anyone. It could have been like kind of any background character that we've seen. It could have been like Gardner or whoever. It just wouldn't really, because Scarlet is such a non-entity of a character, ultimately the reveal doesn't really do much for me, because she's just like a background figure that maybe spoke a handful of times before now, you know? So they team up with Leo, who helps them get into Scarlet's house, and Leo is just here because he wants to purge the more corrupt Zodiac members. This ends with them capturing Scarlet. Why they break into the house, and when they're in Scarlet's house, Aaron comes across a photo of Scarlet and there's 5 other individuals with her, One of them is Frederick, and he doesn't recognize the others, but he assumes that these are the other Zodiac elites. I thought there'd be something a bit more about like Arin leaving a trace that he was in her house, and that was going to come into play. Just kind of unmask Scarlet in public after this. Zodiacs have a little meeting. Apparently they've been plotting to use like a special rare item on this like cosmic Minakai, and they're going to capture it by using the item, which will turn into an egg, and then if they hatch the egg, then it's loyal to them. That's kind of their plan. Sounds smart enough. Sagittarius also gets captured here, and that's the end of that. And then we have a battle between Kyle and Arin at the end. It's nice. Overall, I did enjoy this. I would read more, but I think having smaller, more direct goals would be good, because I guess kind of with like RPGs or whatever, like Pokemon, you're always technically progressing towards your goal of being strong as long as you train. Like as long as you're training a bit, you're always technically advancing, right? The plot, quote unquote. But can feel somewhat like grinding. Them going to Scarlet's house, that's a smaller goal, that's a smaller plan that they're enacting, rather than just, I want to be really strong at this thing. So it's something just more immediate that we can see the fruits of, right? Would have liked to see a stronger connection from like the warehouse to just happenstance. Sagittarius finds them in the tower and then attempts murder. Just something a little more proactive on both our character, both the protagonists and our antagonists. Oh, and I think another kind of thing I have with it is that I guess like for a video game or whatever, it'd be like you cleared level 5, you know, and then there's like you defeat a mini boss or something. But just by the nature of the tower being random and changing constantly, it feels like there's less of a sense of progress. Like, I think they get to level 20 or so by the end of this book, and it just feels like, okay, like, I think there's like a huge number of floors. I guess maybe if they got some kind of like special prize or something, it'd be like, wow, we got to level 30, we got this reward. That would have also like helped a bit to where it's like something they obtained rather than we're climbing like infinite levels in this tower. And I don't think it's infinite, but there are a lot of them. So it just felt like we were really hunkered down by like the first 20 levels and kind of, you know, we're gaining in levels, but it's not exactly equaling out into anything special. That was Minakai Monster Tamer. I'll read more. Now we're on to The Shadow Men by T.J. Martinell. So this book is set after World War I, and it's about two agents, John Savage and Marlon Trent. They work for an organization known as Stigma. They are tasked with eradicating international communism. There's a lot of action in this book. There's a lot of mystery, espionage, that type of thing. And I'll go into why a little more at the end of this. And yeah, I'll be a little more brief with this one. Unfortunately, I could only get this book as an ebook, so it did make taking notes a lot harder, just kind of a bitch. We opened in Norway in 1921. Our American agents Savage and Trent foil some communist plan to attack the Norwegian royal family, and then we cut to Moscow and we meet our villain. His name is Shukov. He is too radical for the communists, and he really wants to start a war, but he keeps getting put down by the other commies. We go back to John and Marlon, who are from Stigma. They go to Stigma for their next assignment, and then they're sent to a casino to track the Russians down. This little plot unravels into Shukov and his men. They were going to blow up the White House and throw it all into disarray and start a war. But when they're flying the bomber, they get stopped. There was also a commie who kind of helps them called Andreev, who went there to put Shukov down. And John and Marlon believe that Shukov is dead, but he's in fact not dead, but he's being smuggled back to Russia for a trial. In part 2, we jump ahead to 1930, and our two guys are being sent to kill a rogue agent named Seamus Barrett. And Barrett is an entertaining guy. He's a little crazy. They reflect on, in the past, they had to kill their own mentor, Anthony Wayne, and a lot of people have been getting replaced lately, but they're just following orders. Turns out that Stigma has been replaced from the inside out. Shukov is back. and he wants samples from something. He's also like a master of disguise, and he's an American senator, Senator Keeger, and they've taken over the organization now. Part 2 ends with John and Marlon escaping. They get in a few gun battles, but they're just on the run. They're done with the organization, and they're just laying low. Part 3 has us jump to 1933. They've been hiding out for a couple years, and they're suddenly attacked by some mafia guys. They regroup with some of the other cast-out agents, and they understand that they have to take this fight to Stigma itself. They can't just wait to get picked off one by one, so they have to be a little more proactive. Part 4 has them get into some gunfights in New York. They're doing a lot of reconnaissance. There's a good scene with an airship and a sniper and a Christmas tree, and they kill a third guy because they had some bad info. Turns out that the agent, quote-unquote, who was posing as a homeless man who gave them this info was actually Shukov in disguise. They assault some Stigma places. They try to take a Dr. Archon away, but this is actually a trap, and Shukov is there. We have Unit 18 soldiers who are super soldiers who don't die when they're shot. John and Marlon are able to escape. Shukov is still alive. Barrett is back in the fight. And that's just kind of where we end the book. It's not terribly long. It was entertaining, but I felt like I needed some more characterization from John and Marlon. I don't remember which one, but I think one of them, like their doctor recommended they eat more fruits for their health, so that guy eats more fruit. And I didn't think there was too much going on besides that in terms of characterization, just not a lot. In terms of like personal lives, loves, goals, that kind of thing. Something to flesh them out. But there are good action scenes here, and now that part of it was entertaining enough, but our characters were very flat. The book didn't really hit highs or lows for me. Nothing really bad, but also nothing really great. I don't know if it means that I just disliked the book and I'm just kind of waffling around. Maybe. Like, the story was fine. Maybe a little cliche with like super soldiers betrayed by their agency and all that. Maybe that's a little too in the mold. And unfortunately, our characters really couldn't pick up the slack from that plot. Would I read more? Maybe. I might read more about the Shadow Men. I would need like more from our characters for sure. But I don't know. We'd see. I'd say from the author, this wasn't like a bad impression of them, and I think they have other works I might check out for next Trough. While I didn't love this, this also wasn't like atrocious to read. This wasn't like painful to read, so I'm still like fairly neutral on this author. Yeah, that's Shadow Men. The Tain. This is Irish mythology, and more specifically the Ulster cycle of Irish mythology. The cattle raid of Cooley. It's mostly about Cuchulainn, the Hound of Ulster, and it is also a non-recommendation unless you're very interested in Irish mythology. There were a lot of parts of this that I did enjoy, but there were many boring sections. Boring and long and boring. I'm glad that I finally read this cover to cover. I knew like all the information going in beforehand, but it was still good to read it cover to cover for once. But a lot of it was a damn struggle to get through. Also, the cattle raid of Cooley, it's supposed to end with the death of Cuchulainn. Spoilers. This book does not. It just ends with the peace treaty, which I dislike since his death is this very powerful moment, and it's not here. Anyways, I know this one will be somewhat boring, and you might want to just skip this, so I would really recommend using the timestamps below. Otherwise, I am just reading some excerpts that I liked from the book. That's it. These are just excerpts. It does cover some of the interesting myths, like the story of Deirdre, which is very sad. Some of the stuff with Cuchulainn, with King Conabar of Ulster. So there is a lot like good intro stuff there before we really get into the cattle raid. I did like this on page 27. This is Cuchulainn's courtship of Emer, and Emer is kind of Cuchulainn's woman. Cuchulainn caught sight of the girl's breasts over the top of her dress. "I see a sweet country," he said. "I could rest my weapon there." Emer answered him by saying, "No man will travel this country until he's killed 100 men at every ford from this place to that place to this place." In that sweet country, I will rest my weapon, Cuchulainn said. No man will travel this country until he has done the feat of this thing and this thing. Cuchulainn repeats, in that sweet country, I will rest my weapon. And she just makes a shit ton of demands. She's like, you're not touching these titties until you're like the greatest warrior in all of Ireland. He's like, okay, fine. Cuchulainn goes to Scotland to train with this warrior woman. He ends up seizing a woman by her breasts and then has her that night, and she bears him a son. So good for him. And then 7 years later happens, and it turns out Cuchulainn's son has come, and he like kills a guy. And then he and Cuchulainn fight because he made the boy say, hey, son, make sure you never tell anyone what your name is so that we can have like this Greek tragedy moment later on where I kill you and I'm like hugging your corpse on a beach later. So that's what happens. He slaughters his son. The story of how the Bull of Connaught and the Bull of Ulster came to be. They were two pig keepers, and then they were also druids. They just changed shapes and fought each other all the time until they ended up like this. The Tain starts with Meabd and Eliel, who are king and queen of Connaught. They get in a fight about who owns the most shit in their relationship. And it turns out that Meabd is a bit short because her husband has a magic white bull, and the only other bull that's worth the same value is an Ulster. So this is a big plot, the Calraid of Cooley, to go steal that brown bull so that she will be equal to her husband in power and everything. And Meab makes a lot of promise. This is something that happens a lot in this story, but Meab makes a lot of offers to people, and then she also always tosses in and my own friendly thighs on top of that. Later on, I'll give you this chariot, all these lands and everything, and my own friendly thighs on top of that. She offers it again. Oh, and this guy, Mac Roth, is going to give the bull to them because he's really impressed with the offer that Meab's men make to him. And he's like, and Meab's friendly thighs will be given on top of that. And he's like, oh boy. Meab's men are boastful that night and said that, yeah, well, if he wasn't going to give us the bull, we were just going to kill him and take it. So he's like, all right, fuck off. So Meab and Eliel, they raise this massive force to go storm Ulster and go steal the bull. And Ulster at this time, because of something before, there was this woman called Matcha, and she was pregnant at the time, and she and her husband were going to a festival, and she said, husband, whatever you do, don't be boastful during this festival. He's like, okay, wife, I definitely won't be boastful. So he makes this boast that his wife is like really, really fast and can just beat any like horse even. And then the king's like, okay, even though your wife's super pregnant right now, if she doesn't race, I'm going to just execute the both of you. So she's forced to race, and she wins, and she gives birth there and then to twins, places called Im and Matcha, the twins of Matcha, which was a place in Ulster. But because of this, she curses all the men of Ulster that they will go into labor pains like a woman giving birth during like times of need. So while Connaught is invading, all of the men of Ulster are like bent over in pain from labor pains, so they can't fight. There's only really Cuchulainn and a few other guys for other reasons. They're not affected by the curse. So it's just up to Cuchulainn. And Cuchulainn is just like at the fort. He's killing like hundreds of men each day. Hundreds of men. He also has a warp spasm, which he turns into basically a monster, kind of like the Hulk, if you will. And he just goes on a killing frenzy, and nothing can really hurt him when he's like this. So during the night, he kills hundreds of men by like throwing stones. And then during the day, he fights at least one man at a ford and kills them. There's a good part with this guy, Freyek, who, after Cuchulainn has killed a shit ton of men, he's like, I know, I'm going to attack Cuchulainn when he's in the water. Cuchulainn, he's not good in the water. So he goes up to Cuchulainn when he's bathing, and Cuchulainn kills him very easily, but you have to appreciate the attempt. Cuchulainn's just throwing a bunch of stones, killing people. There's also the Morrigan who shows up, and it's a real shame that this ended without Cuchulainn's death because the Morrigan is there. And that's a really cool scene in Irish mythology, but that is not here. Oh, and Meab is like promising everyone her daughter's hand in marriage if they will fight Cuchulainn and kill him. It's like get a bunch of people really fucking drunk and then say like, hey, look, you're going to get our daughter's hand in marriage if you beat Cuchulainn, and you're definitely going to beat Cuchulainn. Somebody has to kill Cuchulainn, right? You're like, wow, that could be me. I did like this one a lot. This is with Loren, who is brother to the King of Munster. He's a vainglorious man. They gave him the wine and put Finbar at his right hand. Meeb looked at the pair. There is a handsome couple, she said. They would make a fine match. Sure enough, Elil said. He can have her if he brings me the head of the warped one. I'll bring it, Lorene said. So Lorene goes to meet Cuchulainn the next day with the girl beside him urging him on. Cuchulainn springs up to him unarmed and took his weapons away roughly. He grasped him in his two hands and ground and rattled him until the dung was forced out of him. The ford grew foul with his droppings in every direction. The air thickened with his dust. Then Cuchulainn flung him into Lugaid's arms. Ever afterward, for as long as he lived, Lorene could not empty his bowels properly. He was never free from chest pains and couldn't eat without groaning. Yet he is the only man of all who met Cuchulainn on the Tanbu Kulig who escaped him alive, though it was a cruel escape. So he is the only man who survived, but he can never shit properly again. Morgan is here. She's insulted by Cuchulainn because Cuchulainn rebuffs her. But a lot of the book is just a lot of like fights that don't matter. Like Cuchulainn can't really lose to any of these people, so it's just like kind of really, really boring. Because it's like Cuchulainn killed another guy that had no chance of defeating Cuchulainn. So it's like, what's the point of reading it? There is one good fight with Ferdia, who was like his foster brother when he was training with that woman warrior in Scotland. That's a good one. That goes on for a few days. Like, yeah, if there are just more fights like that, it would matter. But then Cuchulainn is stalled for enough time. The Ulstermen are free from their pangs. So the army rises up. Finbar, the princess who is promised to literally everybody, just about everybody, when she hears that 700 men had died because of her deceit of being promised everyone, which I don't think is really her fault, she just dies of shame. Oh my god. But when it's like, and then the Ulstermen rose up, there's like several fucking pages just naming every Ulsterman that came to fucking fight. It's so boring. Like, I hate it. I really don't care about this genealogy crap. It means nothing to me. The Morgan is like urging both sides to go to war with each other. She's a deceitful little bitch. Cuchulainn's able to capture Meeb when she's literally having her period. And he spares her because he is not a killer of women. I will quote to you from page 249. Meeb had sent 2 handmaids to lament over him and make his wounds open again, telling him how Fergus was fallen and Ulster broken in battle while he was kept from the fight, but he smashed their heads together so that each was stained gray from the other's brains. Excuse me, did he not just murder 2 women? And then, no, he wasn't a killer of women. Whatever, we're going to let that go. We're going to move right on. We have a very based line from Fergus, who was in exile from Ulster, and he's been advisor to Meeb and Elil. Fergus says, "We follow the rump of a misguiding woman," Fergus said. "It is the usual thing for a herd led by a mare to be strayed and destroyed." Fucking based, fucking red-pilled. The Irish, they knew what was up. And then it ends with Elil and Meeb making peace with Ulster and Cuchulainn for 7 years afterward, killed in Ireland. It ends here. What actually happens is, so this is later when Meeb and some others have conspired to defeat Cuchulainn and draw him out to his death. They try to get him to break his gias, and his gias are taboos that are placed on him. So Cuchulainn's not allowed to eat dog meat, but you're also not allowed to really refuse hospitality. So when an old woman offers him some dog meat, he has no choice but to break his gias and eat it. So he's spiritually weakened in the fight ahead of him. Cuchulainn is wounded. He ties himself to this standing stone to die on his feet, facing his enemies. And his enemies are too afraid to approach him, thinking that he's alive. And it's only until a raven lands on his shoulder that his enemies believe that he's dead. I don't know. I think the death of Cuchulainn should have definitely been included here. I know it like happens after the events of the Tain, but still, like, Cuchulainn's such a major character in the Tain, it should have been there. But overall, worth reading, like for me at least, just to get some more Irish mythology, but it can be an extremely dry read at times, so I wouldn't really just recommend that for someone just off the bat to get into it. The Path of Lightning by Warren Walker. So, because this is an ARC book and because of bonds placed upon me, I'm going to be waiting a few months to do my usual retrospective. I think this is coming out in October. So it's going to be a few months after that before I do a full retrospective. So I'm going to just talk about the book spoiler free. This is a recommendation. The book is set in a grim fantasy world that has a young mercenary named Tyre who wants power, admiration. There's also Mathai, who is an inquisitor who seeks knowledge. And we have Myrrh, who is a powerful and deadly warlock that is trying to find the Fae people who have kind of pulled away from the world. The three of them are together on this bloody quest. There's a ton of action scenes. I would say the book is really defined by its action scenes. I felt that maybe there was a few too many, but if you really like action, then this book has plenty of them. It's an interesting world that I want to explore more, and the characters were such a huge improvement for me, because in some of the previous works by Warren Walker, the characters there were irredeemable pieces of shit and monsters. They are not irredeemable monsters this time, but people, human even. They're even human. I do want to see what happens to our characters in the next installment, because I do believe that there are going to be more books. What's going to go on with them, the mysteries that have been set up. I will emphasize that if you don't enjoy action really at all, I don't think you'll like this, and I'll mention it on my Twitter whenever it gets released, just to remind people, but I do believe it's like early October when it's supposed to come out. But it's grim, it's pulpy, it's a recommendation. It's a lot of monster killing and fighting, and good stuff. Okay, this piece of crap. This is the Habsburgs, Martin Rady. This 330-page book on the Habsburgs from beginning to end, 1,000 years of European history crammed into a 330 pages. I didn't finish this and thought the author was shit. This is the only book in this Trough I didn't complete, but I figured that if I'm literally going out of my way to do anything else than read, then I shouldn't finish this. The author annoys me at several points in this book. I wanted to learn more about the Habsburgs since they play such a large role in European history, and I don't know too much about them, but this was gay. I will still look for a good Habsburg book at some point, but this sucked. I'm just going to list off some excerpts that really pissed me off. Overall issue I had is just, it's a slog of names, kings, emperors, birthdays, deaths, marriages. It's nonstop, and it all meant so little to me, because there's so much of it, right? It was just a bunch of, like I read a big book on Napoleon and I thought it was fucking great, like really interesting and informative, and it moved at a good pace. And just with this book, it was just, I got none of that, and that Napoleon book was a lot longer than this. So it's like, I'm fine of reading like a longer history book, but this just sucked. And our author really pissed me off with his section on Philip II, who I don't know a ton about. The author just cries a lot about how Philip II treated Muslims and Jews, because apparently Philip was being cruel to Muslims in Spain, and upon its suppression, there was an expulsion and dispersal of about half of the Muslim population. Oh no, how terrible. Also, Spain had like 300,000 Jews at this time. Philip was suspicious of the Jews within his realm, and they allegedly discovered secret correspondence between Jewish elders in Spain and rabbis in Constantinople. In this alleged correspondence, the rabbis of Constantinople responded to the complaints of Spanish Jews by recommending the infiltration and overthrow of Catholic society. The letter went on to recommend that Jews also enter the law and administration in order to subvert the government and judiciary. Wow, this letter sounds very fake and not something that Jews have ever done. I can't believe it. This is definitely fake. But since Jews were now so hard to detect, new methods had to be found to determine their concealed Jewish identity. During the 16th century, therefore, it became increasingly common for guilds, religious orders, and chivalric societies to demand proof of descent as a precondition for membership. Philip II championed this practice, upholding the rights of corporations to undertake investigations and to exclude those whose bloodline had been supposedly contaminated by either Jewish or Muslim ancestry in order to establish purity of blood. Genealogy became an obsession throughout Spanish society, and the production of false documents a new industry. Yeah, that doesn't sound based at all. Man, Philip II, what a piece of shit. This guy is so evil. And it's just the author's just whining and crying that Spanish people want a society that promotes Spanish people. They want a society free of people who are just trying to subvert and destroy them and their way of life. Oh no, the horror. He says that Jews in New Spain and Peru had their property confiscated. Inquisition came to Mexico City. This destroyed the Jewish community in New Spain. We do get like one little paragraph on page 100 about the Ottoman slave trade, which at its peak was consuming 100,000 European slaves a year. So it's just a lot of crying about Philip II persecuting Jews and Muslims. And then we get like a little tiny paragraph where they admit that, oh yeah, Muslims were enslaving a lot of Europeans at this time. And for some reason, Spanish were distrustful and hated Muslims and also Jews. And aren't they like really bad people for feeling that way? It's like, fuck this author with little fucking faggot. Shitty book. I have no legal thoughts about Martin Rady. Just kind of a fag. I don't know if he was Jewish or not. He calls himself a professor at University College London, leading expert on Central Europe, I'm sure. Apparently he lives in Kent in the UK. I assume Kent is a shitty part of the UK. I've never been. Yeah, that's a piece of crap. Really shitty book on the Habsburgs. United States of Death by Xander Schreiber. Our last title, and certainly not our least. As I said before, this is from that NGE cosplay book thread. We are set in the future, which is dystopic, with government control and the hardware and software administration, which manages the use and production of technology. Our main character, Matthew Driggs, is framed in a hack that puts an asteroid on a path heading towards Earth. And we also have a second POV, which is Dulcie Raines, who is an agent with the HSA and wants a better future for herself and her family. That's the premise. This book is absolutely a recommendation. I liked a hell of a lot of it. There's a whole cyber world that I thought was cool, and the book crossed some lines that I didn't think would be crossed. I was definitely surprised by the author when we went there a few times. However, I did feel that this book rushed over some key moments where I would have liked a little more time spent here, and it could have used a little more fat in the middle. It could have used a gunt. Could have used some good gut cunt. But nonetheless, I really liked it. If that premise sounds interesting at all, please, 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 fuck this part of the video, skip it, and just go get the book, read the book. I really liked it. We open with a young Matthew Driggs, whose parents have warned him not to go to the lower levels of their city, but during a church mission with their parents where they're traveling around to these lower levels, and I mean this tower goes several hundred levels below. They're out there delivering food, and Matthew spots a dumpster full of a bunch of technology and stuff in there, so he's really interested in it because it has some virtual reality sockets, and he makes a note to return for them when he can. He gets a chance a few weeks later when his parents go out for the night, so he goes. He's getting this really good haul, he's going to be able to fix up some of the stuff with a friend and they can sell it, when he gets kidnapped. He wakes up with a bunch of other kids. He's missing his right ear, and instead he has an implant on where his ear should be, and he has no control over his body. He's moved around like a little puppet. He and the other children are transported to a place, and it sounds like there's a party going on. The kids are being picked out by party goers, one of whom has just been elected to the United States Congress, and the kids are being led away after being called scrumptious and delicious looking. But Matthew is not picked, along with two others, and their bodies are marched back to the truck they were brought in on, and they're being driven away somewhere. But the police are able to stop this truck and free the kids, And that's our opening. I think this is a really strong opening. Holy shit, I didn't think we would have like a member of Congress engaging in a party where little kids are being handed out like that. But holy shit, was not expecting that. But all right, man, I like it. We cut to Dulcie Raines, who is meeting with a Professor Weishaupt, who encourages her to join the HSA. Her mom, and her sister have always struggled, and she's really hoping to do more for them and just give them the good lives, right? We cut back to Matthew, who is an employee with the HSA. This asteroid that he was doing a audit on has been hacked. He's trying to fix it. The signal is coming from somewhere called the Null Net. The Null Net is one of the largest illegal nets out there. Since it's not something that's approved or controlled by the HSA, it's like a free internet, and that's very dangerous to these people. We're back with Dulcie, who is brought to a ceremony with Weishaupt, and they meet a bunch of people called the League of Light that has powerful academics and political figures there. They have a literal pyramid that they keep suspended off the ground, and every time they make progress towards the great goal, they lower it. The great goal is the perfect society. It's free from need or want, where everyone is equal. Have them repeat this mantra a few times, and then there's people in robes that come out to give them a red liquid that Raines thinks has a metallic taste. They have them cut themselves with knives, and the little knife boxes they are given have their names in it. And they cut themselves, and they mark the pyramid with their blood. Then we're with Driggs. He is being interrogated by an Agent Kim and the new Agent Dulcie Raines. The asteroid is on a collision course with Earth still. They haven't been able to fix it. And it's going to take out the West Coast and the Islamic Republic of Europe. They can't do anything with the asteroid since they've been locked out of it. Raines thinks that Matthew is an innocent man, and they're doing some more investigations, so they enter the Null Net. On the Null Net, there's one website called the United States of Death, which is basically the biggest website on the Null Net. It's run by 4 people. They're called the 4 Emperors, who are the founders and creators of the place. I did think at first, and I was wrong, but since the beginning had Matthew and 2 other kids be the ones that were saved at the end, I thought that maybe it was like Matthew and the 2 other kids, and then maybe another kid who are the emperors of this place. That is not true. But we have these 4 guys here. We have Octavian, who is the lead emperor. Octavian is a guy who wears a black t-shirt, pants, Asian features, and bowl cut hair, and they believe that Octavian is the one who hacked the asteroid and that he's potentially just killed millions of people. She wants the Null Net destroyed because, like, if Octavian's willing to do this, how much damage to society had come from over there over the years. So Driggs has just been in a cell for a few days. He's had nothing he can do. He gets a call from his Pastor William. Apparently Pastor William is being investigated as well by the HSA, because years ago, when Muslims created the Islamic Republic of Europe, a lot of people fled to the United States of Americas. Many were Christians. The government, to help, started financially supporting churches. They soon realized that they had to put in some standards on what was being taught in these churches. They found out they were funding some pretty wild places without any sort of control. So they create an official set of doctrines, and because the government directly funds religion, they control religion. And Pastor William is just in some trouble because if Matthew's a criminal, then there was a criminal in his church. So he's under investigation as well. And Driggs is just alone. He doesn't have anyone who can help him. And while this is going on, Agent Kim and Agent Raines, they're going into the Null Net. They're trying to track down a guy called the Doctor. And they're trying to get to the Doctor by going to the Doctor's daughter, who also is also on the Null Net, because a lot of people who have children also have their children on the Null Net too. So if they can trick the daughter into taking a tracking program, then they can find out where the Doctor is, because they'll have a bargaining chip. So Raines goes there under disguise. There's like a little fairy realm, part of the Null Net, and she goes there and she's hanging out with Null Berea, trying to get her to take the tracking program. but she won't. She gets caught and is almost trapped there before another HSA agent, Ali, comes in and rescues her. On 53, we're back with Driggs, and Driggs is talking about how he tried to contact some other analysts. So much for his friends. I did have a question that did not get addressed. What happened exactly to his parents? His parents are there in the prologue, and then there's no mention of them after this. I assume that they're dead, but I need something here. This is too important of a detail to leave out. Just like, and then his parents died one day. If his parents are still there and they're still a part of his church, then yeah, they definitely need to mention. I would assume they would play a larger role if they were still alive. But all we kind of have for Driggs is this Pastor William, who's important to him. But what happened to the parents? Just, I need a little mention here. But Driggs is able to like hack his computer in his cell to get a message out to Rains and tell her that he has evidence that he's innocent. So he contacts her, and then she comes over because she believes that he's an innocent guy. She thinks that he's telling the truth here. They're making another attempt on the doctor's daughter again, but this time they're using Spellbinder. And Spellbinder is an AI program, and it turns into a snake that goes into the fantasy realm, and it like sings, and it calls the kids, and it gathers them, and it's trying to get the kids to eat an apple. And by eating the apple, it's actually a tracking program. This symbolism was a little over my head. I wasn't quite sure what the author was going for with a snake that's offering apples to these innocents and trying to get them to eat the apple. I don't know. It was a little subtle for me. I didn't get it. I'm joking around. It's fine. I think it works. Rains is a little conflicted about all this, but she convinces herself that this is a rescue operation for the kids. They're trying to get these kids away from their criminal parents. I did question, however, why there wasn't greater security for this area. Like no adults watching at all. Since the null net is like the free net, there's going to be a lot of really good people around who are just using it to stay in contact with each other away from government eyes. However, there's going to be some bad hombres, right? There's going to be some bad people around, criminals, people looking to do bad shit to kids. Did think there should have been like a greater level of protection, because like Spellbinder just goes in and is able to trick these kids because the kids think he's just like a program for their world and not this malicious AI trying to trick them. I think I needed like a little something there. Like maybe there was a parental guard and they got past them somehow. But I do think like parents would kind of form like a babysitting or some type of like co-op so that there would always be like parental supervision there. Kind of a deal. And when Driggs was talking with Pastor William, apparently Pastor William was a criminal in his past, so that also came up during the investigation. We never know what he was a criminal for. I don't think this is ever explained. Perhaps I've forgotten, but I don't think it's ever mentioned. I think it should have been mentioned since it was brought up, because it's just a dangling thread. Rains is able to gather enough evidence that Driggs is innocent, so Driggs is cleared. And then he gets a message from the pastor that the charges against him have already dropped. So it's not a genuine investigation. This is just the government trying to hurt you however they can by going after someone close to you. In preparation for the asteroid coming to Earth, because even though they believe that Octavian like piggybacked off Driggs's like code to hack the asteroid, they haven't been able to reverse its trajectory or whatever to get back control of it. So a lot of people are moving out to Utah, the HSA, and there's also the HQ for SmartNet, which is government virtual reality. People can enter SmartNet and just live like a carefree where they don't work or anything, or you can enter the SmartNet and work if you choose to. It's like kind of a UBI program, right? Except it's just in virtual reality. Sounds great. From the tracking program that they used on the doctor's daughter, they are able to capture the daughter, but it turns out the doctor isn't living there. So they're essentially holding the girl hostage And Reigns feels uneasy about this. She's questioning if this is right. And while they're moving out west, Driggs is sitting next to a guy named Jack on a plane. They're checking out the SmartNet. It looks nice, cozy. I think it's like this little Swedish mountain village, and you can walk around. It's all great. There's a mountain where it's all like realistic, except for like a couple of spots. So they go up to this mountain, and if you jump off the mountain, you can fly. So they're flying around. They're just exploring it all. And he and Jack split off, and Driggs notices that there's this weird temple that's not on the map, and there are people in robes at this temple. I did feel like it was a little too easy for Driggs just to come across this. Like, I don't know, maybe if he like noticed something else and like, that's weird. So then he investigates that, and then he happens to come across this. But it just feels a little too easy just to like, hey, I came across this weird temple. But they're in Utah now, and next to the HSA campus is SmartNet, which is a really huge pyramid. Driggs is testing out the null net for himself. He's being trained by Ali, the guy who helped out Reigns that time ago. And he's trying this like basic game out where it's like you can essentially like shoot programs at people, but instead of it like being the program, it's like a fireball. You know what I mean? So he's trying that out, and he breaks the game a little bit. He does like a move that you're not supposed to be able to do while in the game. Kim and Reigns, they're trying to go to the doctor and get the doctor to give himself up willingly. I did like this. I thought this was cool world building. So apparently in the future, they can ship like a robotic surgery table to you, and then all you had to do was plug in the table, lay back, and then the table's robot arms, controlled by doctors and nurses all over the world, did the work. I think that's really cool. I don't think we're anywhere near anything like that, but I think that's a really cool idea. Very interesting. Doctor is not willing to cooperate, and Octavian appears, and there's a bit of a standoff between Octavian and them. Agent Kim really hates Octavian. He's kind of fanatical in wanting to bring him down and kill him. We don't know why yet. And they get trapped in the null net for a little while. Like Octavian's able to do something to like halt them from exiting out right away. But they are able to free them and escape. Ali has been showing Driggs the ropes in the United States of Death and the null net. He is just walking around, taking it all in. He's in the Bazaar district. Through the crowd, a woman says, "Hello, Northwoods," which is his username on the nullnet. When was the last time you went to church? He thinks back, it's been a few weeks, since he's been arrested and all that. He turned around to see an anime schoolgirl with pigtails standing on the green behind him. "Have you heard about the Cyberthedral?" she said. The name above her said Perilandra. "It's right over there." She points to it. It's the biggest Christian site on the nullnet. "Come on, let me show you around." So he follows her along. I don't think this is a bad scene or anything like that. However, I do kind of wish Driggs was a little more proactive. Not just he gets picked out of a crowd by this girl, and then that's what kicks it off. Like, have him be like, "Oh, I haven't been to church in a while. Wow, look at that big church over there." And then just curiosity leads him over there, so he's a little more proactive. And then he enters the church, and she can still be there. And then, like, once he's in the church, since he's already taken that step himself, then the rest of the scene can just play out fine. But I think it would just make it a little more proactive, maybe. I don't think it's a huge thing, but I think that'd be a little tighter. Talks about the government, how the government has changed the gospel. Instead of preaching the truth, now all the churches toe the official line, which is a lie. Oh, and apparently Perilandra is also Octavian's sister, so there's that. And I think because she is such an important character, just for her to pick him out of a crowd of people is a little too easy. So I think, if he was just like exploring the church for a bit, and then she was also there, that would have been something. I really love Chapter 18. I think Chapter 18 is phenomenal. We have Reigns and we have Agent Kim. They are doing a raid with a bunch of like tactical guys, and Agent Reigns and Kim, they're like, because like they had a bunch of drones and shit and cameras like go around this like warehouse that they're raiding like hours before. something somehow they're there virtually, so like the tactical guys can see them like in front of them through like their cameras and like their vision, but like everyone else there cannot see them. And they're able to walk around and stuff. They can't interact physically with stuff, but they're able to walk around and everything. So it's really fucking sick. They're here to capture the Doctor, have like Rains and Kim like peering around corners and then pointing out to their guys where like how the enemy is set up, where they can go to like get around this barricade and then attack the enemy from behind and like pincer people. It's really cool. I thought this was great tech. All the hollow people stuff and gathering intel and just like doing reconnaissance. This was all great. Capture the Doctor and several other people from the nullnet. Driggs gets notification that Pastor William and the whole church are now in the SmartNet camp. They are going to go into the SmartNet, and once you enter the SmartNet, it's for life. Millions are in the SmartNet camp, and the HSA also wants to make Spellbinder into a full nullnet user because as an AI bot, he's limited to where he can go. They're like trying out some codes and stuff that they got from the Doctor, but none of those are working. But then magically it's working, and Spellbinder now has access just like a human does. And Driggs is like, what the hell is this? And he sees that the implant that Spellbinder is using is coming from SmartNet. So it's coming from the pyramid on the other side of the large refugee camp. And he's able to look through some cameras and see that there are just shelves and shelves of people laying inside. And on one of those shelves, it was the Doctor. So Spellbinder is using the Doctor and like his implant and is kind of piggybacking off him, like kind of just using his body to get around the nullnet and like fake that he's a human user. It makes Driggs a bit uncomfortable. They are still raiding. Rains and Kim are together and they're trying to capture Nero, one of the 4 emperors. They think that they've captured him and they're like raiding people in real life as they approach him on the nullnet because it would just make it easier if he would just surrender, right? Save them some time. But it does not go to plan. They are at the wrong address in real life, and Nero has trapped them, and they are Nero's prisoners. And it explains on 139 that it was possible to set up the connection in a way that if it were to break, it would cause the user to die in the real world. So that's why they can't just log off and trying to force them off, like physically removing the implant or whatever would kill them, so they're trapped. Some HSA agents tried to assault the temple that Nero runs, and that failed, and there are more HSA people who are prisoners as well. Driggs goes to the Cyberthedral, and Paralandra shows up. She asks what's new. He asks if she knows Nero. She says yeah. Driggs says he's holding a couple of my friends hostage in there. She asks if you're from the HSA, and she's like, you think I would help you? She refuses to help, and she goes away. Little bump here is just that this is the second time in the book that Driggs has interacted with Paralandra. If they had like a scene or 2 more scenes before we got here, I would feel better about him like going to her asking for this kind of favor. I know like he's doing it because he's desperate and he doesn't have anywhere else to go to, but I still would have liked another scene of them interacting in between first meeting and now. Like, I think that would have helped a lot. Just something carefree, whatever. I don't think that's like wasting time or like bloating the plot if you're just like focusing on like building this relationship to have this interaction. But Octavian shows up. He calls Spellbinder a demon, AI in user form. And then on 144, this is captured under Nero. Nero runs like a brothel. They have Rains and Kim in cages. Rains and Kim have been raped by some of the users on the nullnet. They're being just humiliated and beaten and abused in this way. But then one of the other emperors, Aurelius, shows up. Aurelius wants to talk to Rains. Apparently Aurelius knew Professor Weishaupt back in the day. He says he was always interested in what was best for humanity. Jacob, I think the opposite motivated him. I think deep down he had some sort of hatred for the idea of a prosperous humanity. They go back and forth a bit. Aurelius asks if it's all right to kill. Is it right to take someone's life? She says, yes, because if you're opposing the great goal, you are killing, and it's not wrong to kill murderers. My right is to remove people who are standing in the way of progress. So this radicalizes her even further. She's dead set in her motivations now. Driggs is digging into Spellbinder a little bit. Spellbinder is like insanely powerful for an AI. He's questioning that. Spellbinder actually pops in on Driggs when he's doing all this research, and he gives him access to look at all this stuff because he doesn't care. The project name was called Legion Mark 59, and Spellbinder explains what really goes on here. They harvest the minds of SmartNet users who are physically present at the facility. So Spellbinder is able to use their minds as like processors, and that's why he's as powerful as he is. The extraction of the mind is invasive and does require the death of the physical body. Their avatars live on the SmartNet, though. So from the outside, there really is no change. They are still online. Do the users know? No, it isn't really necessary, said Spellbinder. All persons of the United States of the Americas are government property as per legislation passed and signed by President McRoy. Driggs pulls out his little digital Bible. He opens it to Mark chapter 5, verse 9. Something, something legion, because there are many of us inside this man. They named it after demons possessing a man in the Bible. How could this happen in the United States of the Americas? This was a Christian country. Christianity was the official state religion. The state supported churches. Even those who were not believers held respect for the church. Driggs sends a message to Pastor William saying he wants to talk about the SmartNet because they're still in the refugee camp, but they haven't been put in the SmartNet yet. And he thinks about Jack, because Jack was going to be one of the first people onto the SmartNet because it was like part of this PR campaign about like people being put into a lottery or whatever, and Jack was one of the winners to join the SmartNet. So he goes back to the mountain village that he and Jack visited when they were on the plane. The village was pretty much the same, but there are more people now. And at a distance, Driggs can see Jack on the mountain. Jack's avatar walked around the top of the mountain for a few minutes with a few other avatars. Then they all went to the jump-off point and took to the air. In the loose formation, they did a couple laps of the mountaintop before landing and walking around aimlessly for a bit. Then they flew again. So Jack was dead. It was clear to Driggs that this was the case. Jack, along with the rest of the users on the top of the mountain, must be dead, and their avatars controlled by some sort of AI running them in a loop. It made the SmartNet seem like it was active when really it was not. I wish we had a bit of a longer scene here, like some more build up to this, like this revelation. Also, like if there's a little more of Jack, then his death would have a bit more weight, a little more impact. Driggs is curious to see how it works, so he goes up to Jack's avatar and says hello. Asks if Jack remembers him. Thinks that the avatar changed a little bit, and then Jack says he remembers Matthew. And they're having a little conversation, and then Spellbinder appears. He says hello, and he says, sorry, but I need his mind. Driggs questions why Spellbinder needs Jack's mind in particular, and it turns out Jack was a technician working on communications infrastructure. And Driggs logs off after that, and he goes to his room and he takes a shower. He felt like he needed cleansing. So it's very sinister. It's very ugly. I like it a lot. We're back with Kim and Rains in Nero's prison. Spellbinder and Driggs are here. They free Kim and Rains, but they're still trying to capture as many people as they can. They're able to get some small fish, but not like Nero or any of the big guys. I did have like a little issue here because it said earlier that other HSA agents tried to storm the temple and they were also taken prisoner. I know it's really small, but it's not mentioned if they were also rescued or if they rescued those guys at some later point as well. They're just kind of forgotten about. So I would have liked, just like a sentence or two, like, hey, what happened to these people? Oh, and when Rains is free in the real world, she kisses Driggs on the cheek. It's very sweet. Her mom, who is sick, is not doing well, and the staff isn't able to really handle her at the facility she's at. And she thinks that her mom really needs to be on the SmartNet, and she's making the choice for her family. She sends a request for her mom and sister to be picked up and brought to the SmartNet place. Driggs questions the millions of people that must be inside SmartNet, and then he remembered that all the people inside SmartNet die after a few days, so they would just remove the bodies and just add a fresh one. It gave him mixed feelings about the rescue. Did he do the right thing? He messages Octavian on the NullNet app saying that he got his people out of there. Some of the users might have compromised locations they need to know. Thanks for the help. Because after finding out the truth about Spellbinder, Driggs met with Octavian and the other emperors. He confirmed their fears about Spellbinder. The legions of minds were ripped from people as they died, unable to do anything about it. On over to them a bit. And then we get a message on 166. It's from Pastor William. Sorry for the slow reply, said the message. We were in the process of getting into the SmartNet. This is the first message I'm sending from inside. This is great. Driggs nearly dropped his computer in the hallway and started crying. Instead, he managed to keep himself together until he made it to his apartment. There, he closed the door behind him and leaned against it while he slid to the floor. Tears were coming out of his eyes. He was too late. His church was in the SmartNet. His friends, pastor, family, all online and days away from dying. They did not even know. We say family here. I don't know if he means parents or not, or if he's just like referring to these people as his family. So yeah, I still like, we need a mention of his parents. What happened to his parents? What's the deal with the parents? I want to know about the parents. Very sad. Good scene, good scene, good scene. But I also feel like we need to spend more time with these people to have the impact, because all we have is like that one video call of Pastor Williams and then some messages between Driggs and Williams. We never have like a full-on scene with them together before they're in the SmartNet. So it would have a little more impact, I think. He does meet with Pastor Williams in the SmartNet. They have like a church there now. Driggs tries to tell him that the SmartNet isn't a safe place, and his voice gets cut out and everything, and there's like a red border that forms around his field of view, and the words forbidden topic flash in front of him. And then we have Kathy, who is like a paperwork person for the church, and then she's like, I got an alert about an illegal conversation going on. And Kathy says, this is the real world. According to recent executive orders, the SmartNet is as real as the non-virtual world. Anything you can do out there, you can do here, and more, it's better. She was right that this contradicted pretty much everything that the church had taught. The government was co-equal of God, and they could not question it. For a second, Driggs even thought they should drop this and just go along with everything. Then he remembered Jack and the other minds. See, Jack isn't that strong of a name to evoke here just because we had a very short scene with Jack, and then he was taken over by Spellbinder. So if there's a little more time with Jack, this would be better. But Driggs fails to convince Pastor William to get out of there, and it might even be too late anyways. And he thinks about the millions of people who are waiting to get in the SmartNet and what's going to happen to them. And then we have another League of Light meeting, and they're having like a countdown party to the asteroid hitting the Earth. I was shocked that this happened. I was convinced that the plot would be them stopping the asteroid somehow and then just like saving the day, but holy shit, the asteroid hits the Earth. It destroys the West Coast, which is mostly evacuated anyways. And I guess it destroys most of the Islamic Republic of Europe. Great. The Muslims drown, then it's great. Yeah, I really thought it'd be them stopping it or something. But we have President Samantha. She's there. I believe this is Sam from our prologue. So she's involved in the whole pedophile ring stuff, sacrifice people in robes, all that good stuff. Parentheses, parentheses, parentheses. There are news anchors here, actors, and a few corporate bigwigs. Oh, so they're being like taken into like the next level of the League of Light stuff. They say bring out the sacrifices, and a bunch of kids get brought out, and they stop in front of each people. So Rains has a little girl stop in front of her, and Agent Kim, who's also part of this, leans in and whispers to her, that's Noble Rhea, that's the doctor's daughter. The rest of the kids here, you helped find all of them too. Spellbinder's apparently also making the kids insane with fear. So there's some really, really evil shit. This is what almost happened to Driggs years ago. That's why he doesn't have an ear. He survived that night. Random kidnappers had not tried to take Driggs, but it was the League. Professor Weishaupt says to initiates, nothing good comes without sacrifice. Cut their throats. The instruction took Rains off guard, but she obeyed. She gripped her knife and stepped towards Noble Rhea, feeling everyone's eyes on her. The girl just stood there, shaking a little. A short time ago, Nero had held her captive in a similar way, forced her to move in the way he wanted her to. It was because of people like him standing in the way of progress that this needed to happen. She caught glimpses of the other initiates cutting the throats of their sacrifices. Reigns held Noble Rhea's head in one hand and used the other to drag the sharp knife across the throat of the young girl. God fucking damn. God fucking damn. I was not expecting this at all. I thought the kids were gonna get out of there somehow. Like, I didn't think the asteroid was gonna hit. We had two kind of insane things happen in one chapter. However, I do have some qualms with this. I think this is a good scene. It's definitely really powerful. We need some reflection here. Like, just right before she does it, like, she's questioning, like, this is a little girl. Can I really kill this little girl? Thinks that she's a criminal. She's the daughter of criminals. She's going to grow up to be a criminal. She's going to grow up to be like the people who beat me, kept me in a cage, humiliated me, raped me, and just have, like, this little mantra in her head, like, they beat me, they raped me, they kept me in a cage. They deserve this, and this is her way of, like, getting back at them. Something. I need a little more reflection here. I need a little more build up, like da-dun, 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 and then she cuts her throat. Just a little more build up here, but, like, it's strong. Also, like, I don't know if she could have reflected, like, I don't know how old Reigns' own sister is. I think she's a teenager, maybe a little older than Noble Rhea, but if she could, like, have the thoughts, like, wow, these kids aren't that much younger than my sister or something, you know, and then she has to push those thoughts away. Like, I'm not thinking about my sister right now. I'm thinking about the future. I'm thinking about the great goal, and these children are in the way of that. A bit more here, have her anger boil over, and then she does it, because it happens pretty fast to where she likes the great goal. She's going to remove any obstacles in her way. She kind of reflects on it a little bit with Nero, but I don't think that's enough. Literally doing, like, child sacrifice. That's literally what we're doing. And they also hesitates a little bit when they're drinking the blood of the children they just killed. Like, holy shit, that's what they're actually fucking doing. And the HSA, like the League of Light, admits that the HSA was responsible for the asteroid hack. And this was their plan all along. There's no way for the plan to support so many people. Add to that there are many people who simply will not get on the team and play along. They have their own dreams that don't include the great goal. We need to get rid of those people. We need the smart net to be the place to put everyone so that they aren't taking up space and resources in the real world. Driggs was supposed to be a scapegoat. He was supposed to end up like Noble Rhea all those years ago, but he managed to get away. So they're just using him right now to try to get to Octavian, but if he's a threat to them, then he's going to have to go. Driggs is speaking with Pelolandra a little bit. That she talks about how the Romans want everyone to worship the emperor, but the Christians said no, so the government killed them. Government, religion, that type of thing. And then Pelolandra gets pulled away. She is being raided in real life. So Driggs is plotting with the emperors to rescue her. He decides that the HSA has to be stopped. The agents of the HSA are supposed to be getting some implants, which just makes them a little faster and better on the null net. And Reigns and Kim are able to get implants on their back. They say that there's actually a supply problem. Driggs is forced to get an implant on his ear, so he only has like a bit of his ear left. So they remove that to force the new implant on him. Kim's laughing about it behind his back because there was no supply problem. They just thought it'd be poetic to finally get rid of all of his ear. She's like playing like the kind of wizard, like shield and fireball game that Driggs was playing earlier with Ali. When she loses and she gets sent into like jail for her team, no way, there's no way she was staying in a cage again. She brought the menu. She leaves game. There was no way she was going to be locked in a cage. She left the game immediately. I like it. I think there needs to be a little more dwelling on what happens. I like her reaction to this, but a little more build-up, like flashes of the event. I just like being kept for, it was days, weeks, I think, like raped and beaten. I know like you don't necessarily want to get into like the grisly details of that, but I think you have to dwell there a little bit for her. Adds a little more depth to some of her actions as well. Driggs is thinking about his implant. Why did it have to be his ear? He runs a search of the security system. He checks the audio files for anyone saying his name in the past few days. And he comes upon one with Kim and Ali talking, and then they're discussing killing Driggs once he's no longer useful, and then he's going to the SmartNet. And then Spellbinder can make good use of him if he's that smart. And they also talk about how fortunate was that Driggs got away when he was a child and wasn't sacrificed. This is a little too easy to me that he can just like search for people talking about his name, and then we have Ali and Kim just like revealing everything, to like really push him over the edge. I think like if he did a little more digging or something, that would have been fine. Also, I know Spellbinder is doing like a lot of stuff, but he is like this super powerful AI, and if he was able to appear just when Driggs was like searching up his name, like you think there would be like some watch taps or whatever on Driggs himself. So I feel like maybe there would have been an alert for Driggs like searching up some of the stuff or seeing some of these files. Something, I don't know. It just feels a little too convenient here. But on the Nullnet, he sees Pelalandra. She's there, but there's also King of Null. And King of Null is Spellbinder. He says that he was just reliving one of his old minds. And he was getting a little too close to Pelalandra, and it upset Driggs. The Emperors talk about it. King of Null was Octavian's friend. He sold out to the HSA and gave them some technology. For years, we heard nothing from him. Then Spellbinder showed up, supposedly in AI, but acted like a human. It seemed to fit. Like King of Null somehow digitized himself. We'll get into that in a little bit. And that's what he did. Kim and Reigns are doing more raids. They think that they found some of the Emperors. I love this. I fucking love this on 204. We have some drones attempting to take off. We have someone trying to lift off from this roof. There are 4 rotors and a large ball. This could be an escape attempt, but the drone, as it clears the doors and moves across the roof, it didn't just take off and fly away. What was it waiting for? The large drone moved across the roof. The buzzing getting even louder. It's too heavy, said Reigns quietly. It's too heavy to fly off. When the drone gets to the edge, it goes airborne, and then it sinks to the ground, and then it goes up a bit, and then it sinks back down, and then slams in the ground, up, slams in the ground, slams in the ground, slams in the ground. They go check out the wreckage, and it's one of the fattest men she's ever seen. It's Nero. I just love this image. I think that's beautiful. Just like the drone trying to get away and then just slams in the ground because he's too fucking fat to fly away. But since Reigns has an implant, Nero is able to like hack in her implant and tries and gets her to grab a gun off one of the tacticals and shoots a tactical there. And then we end that chapter. All the Emperors get taken here except for Octavian. Octavian and Driggs are plotting an escape attempt to get them all out of there along with Pelalandra. Driggs messes around with the HSA like servers, and then he flies over the SmartNet like refugee camp. He drops some video players to the people there to like tell them the truth about what's going on. He doesn't know if this is exactly effective, but he just has to keep moving. So they're able to wake up the Emperors and Pelalandra, and then he's gonna grab them, and then they're supposed to hook up with Octavian, driving in a truck that's full of dead bodies, because in the SmartNet, after a few days, they kill you. They dump your body so that they can have more space to add more bodies. Driggs sees that one of the bodies is Pastor William. He knew he was cutting it close with the timing, but he thought that he would be early enough to release his church before the staff killed them. He was not. Reigns and Kim are pursuing them, and they think they're about to get away, but the HSA stops them. However, Driggs did do a lot of damage to them. A lot of files have been completely wiped. A number of servers have overheated and melted down. He released everyone on the SmartNet. They know the truth. Security's trying to get them back under, but it'll take a while. The worst part, though, is Spellbinder. Spellbinder's still there, but we lost minds. A lot of them, mostly the ones that were currently online, which were the best ones. Where does that leave us? They're months or maybe years to get back to where they were. Octavian calls Agent Kim dad. So there's also that on page 231. So now they are all trapped inside the smart net, and they are not killed instantly because it does take several days for Spellbinder to take over your mind. So they have a few days to plot while they're all prisoners inside there. Spellbinder comes by to taunt Octavian because apparently he had a relationship with Pelandra, and he's going to be reunited with her now. They talk about King of Null a bit. He wanted to become a computer. It was not one to connect with an implant. He wanted to leave his body behind and move his consciousness online. Is that possible? It is possible. Octavian didn't want to talk about it, but it is possible to upload a mind. Apparently they uploaded their mother to it, and she was dying. They were trying to run from their dad at the time. He convinced himself it would work. He has all convinced, and it did work at first. But when you are uploaded, your soul is a real thing, and your soul can connect to a computer, right? If you upload yourself to a computer, your soul can stay with your mind. If the mind separates from the soul, then the person dies, and that's what happened to their mother. And Driggs thinks that they're stuck in here. There's no getting out this time. This is the only way. And Driggs thinks that there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends, Pelandra said, finishing the Bible verse. So they're trapped. They have no friends on the outside. Their only play is to try to upload themselves before they get taken over by Spellbinder. We get some more League of Light stuff where they sacrifice several children, they drink the blood. Agent Kim had pushed for an abortion years ago for the woman who was dating, who was pregnant with twins, a boy and a girl. She didn't go for it. She was on the run, and he's been like hunting them ever since. He hates Octavian and Pelandra for existing, being a reminder of that. In 245, Driggs is talking about they're going to upload his mind but keep his soul nearby to keep him out of Spellbinder's control. With any luck, while his body would die, he would become a fully digital creature and live in the computer systems. I'll touch on that in a little bit, but on 253, Rains is meeting with Professor Weishaupt again inside the SmartNet. We have this. Professor Weishaupt then went on to tell Rains about his own past and what led them all here and where Spellbinder came from, the whole story. I hate this. Explain, dude. Tell me about the professor. What led him down this path? What led him to the great goal? All of that shit. Like, yeah, give me a little something, please, man. A little bit. Give me a little bit here, dude. I'm sure it'd be interesting. I'd like to know. And they think they'll be able to get 3 years to get everyone through onto the SmartNet. Then we need people living on the West Coast to come in as well. How many people are going to survive, said Rains. Was there going to be anyone left who could enjoy the great goal? Not many, said Professor Weishaupt. I think that should have been obvious from my lectures involving the environment. We are well above what this planet can comfortably sustain. This was all part of the great goal. It was more for a select group. It needs to be sustainable. The great goal is for the planet as well as for humanity. Something that goes on, so like these little temples that are on the SmartNet, they have Spellbinder march people's avatars to the temples, and then they're doing the ceremony where they're stealing that person's mind, but they're also physically killing the person at the same time in the real world. Like in the facility, they're like stabbing them with a syringe full of poison, right? Like as they're doing this, they explain that the reason here is just ritual. These are people that have a big giant pyramid that they mark with blood. They sacrifice children and drink their blood. There's no purpose to it. They just like doing it. So, yeah, it fits. Driggs and Octavian, they plan on becoming digital souls so they can, like, fight Spellbinder and get the others out of there. They assault a temple and take it over because the temple has, like, programs that, like, control, like, you uploading a soul. So they're going to try to upload their souls before it's done to them and they have no control over it. I had this on 261. Driggs looked at the altar. This was it then. The last things he would do alive after a fashion. If this worked, he would still be alive, just not with a body. This is a really serious moment to decide to lose his body permanently. I need a little dwelling on it. I really need a little dwelling on it. I gotta have a little something here. Just like, hey, I'm never gonna have a body again. this is it for me. This is literally it. And I know like the physical world's not great because people are just cramped into a few select cities in the world, like in the Americas, and most of the country is just quote unquote a nature preserve. Nature's just left out there. People aren't allowed to be in it. Fighting the Spellbinder and everything as they get uploaded. The emperors are there. Kim, Reigns, the professor's there. Professor talks about Aurelius. They used to go to school together. Aurelius had these ideas that individuals and their rights were more important than the collective. Looks like I was right. And then Octavian and Driggs appeared. They are back, and they're killing Spellbinder, and they're taking over. They're freeing everyone. They are digital beings. They are the ghost in the machine, if you will. Then we have another escape, and everything is even more chaotic and crazy now. Reigns and Kim are trying to stop them from fleeing again. Camp is in chaos. Octavian and Driggs are controlling like drones. Like they've taken over drones and are flying those around. Reigns starts to raise her gun when another voice stopped her. Please don't, it sounded like Driggs. She lowered her gun and looked at the drone. The HSA is finished, so is the League. You have a choice. You can leave and change your life if you want to. I know your family's in the SmartNet. They're still alive. You can get them out. Don't listen to them, Reigns, said Agent Kim. They're evil and you know that. Octavian kills his dad. Drake says it's over, Reigns. You can choose a new life. The great goal you've been chasing is a lie. You know that. Nothing good can come from killing so many. You can help us put society back together properly, learn the truth, do something good. She thinks about it. The dream is literally burning. She says she made her choice. There is nothing else. She put the gun to her head and pulled the trigger. There would be no redemption for her. I'm glad she's dead. I still don't think the offer should have been made to her. I understand it's like compassion or forgiveness or whatever, but I don't like it. She has literally killed and drank the blood of children. You don't forgive that shit. You never forget that shit. Like, I'm not trying to be like super insulting Christians listening to this, but maybe that's up to God to decide, and then maybe if we have like a child killing blood drinker, we just take care of that person, shoot them all and let God sort them out. I think that's an okay strategy here, personally. And they've basically destroyed the HSA. People are waking up in the SmartNet camp. Years and years of data has been destroyed. The president is losing control. The internet is basically the Wild West again because the HSA is gone. She promised to restore service and contact with loved ones within the SmartNet. It never happened. She loses the election. Aside from the loss, many also thought she had grown noticeably older in the weeks leading up to the election, losing any resemblance of youth following it. I don't know if this is like something from Hate Spree as well. Is this adrenochrome? Is that it? Like, you drink the blood, it makes you young? I don't know. I don't keep up with everything, right? But I know enough. Implants are being given out as fast as possible. The doc is back to work. Information is spreading all over the place. And for Driggs, Octavian, and the others, they are flying around until they find a new home in a forest. They build a place out there. Several months after this, the USD gets rebuilt, and now there are 5 emperors. Driggs has joined their ranks. He calls himself Romulus, who apparently was the first and the last emperor of Rome. I knew he was the first. I didn't know if he was the last. Driggs says he's done associating his faith with the government. Constantine was the worst thing that ever happened to Christianity. I take Elagabalus before Constantine. Just talking a little bit, and then they teleport together to the Cyberthedral, appearing in the lobby with the large cross in the middle, and went through one of the doors. Inside was a large group of avatars of all descriptions. Instructions asked everyone to be appropriate, but some, while not graphic, still stuck out. A large raven sitting in a pew drew attention. Driggs walked up to the front where the pastor was standing. A few moments later, everyone else stood up as Perilandra walked down the aisle. So they're getting married at the end. Okay. I did think, because of all like the biblical quotes and stuff, that at the very end, like all the Roman palaces would be destroyed on the USD, and the only thing left would be like the Cyberthedral. I thought that's what we were going for.
Guess the Christian's holy war now!
Ow.
Are those the swords you got at the Toys R Us closeout sale? Murdoch-chan, if you do not stop hitting me, I'll be forced to either turn the other cheek or use my bear mace.
Oh, it burns, you faggot!
Sorry, Murdoch-chan, but you left me no choice. I had to get biblical.
But it's not. It's stuck around. So there you go. I want a reflection at the end. There are so many dead. Like Octavian and Driggs no longer have bodies. Sure, it's like seamless that you're in the digital world and everything, but there has to be something in the back of his head saying you will never have a real body again. Is there any anger from this choice? Any isolation? Any you can never physically hold your wife in the real world. You can never have a family. You can never have children. I guess you could create digital kids, but that's weird. That's not the same thing. I feel like there would be a lot more questions there, some more hesitation to fully do it. I know there's no choice. They have to do it to save the others, but a little more pause there. He's marrying her at the end. I feel like their relationship wasn't developed enough. It feels a little forced. I think it could work, but it just needs a couple more scenes towards the middle, just hanging out with Pellalandra. It could be somewhat plot related, but just he's exploring and then she's there or whatever, just to build them up a bit because they're a little flat right now. We are told that President McRoy lost the election. Who is in charge now? Bad for them? Or are they all right with it? This is a better president, someone that they could not necessarily work with, but what's the state of the government? What's the state of the country? I would like it if Rain's family, her sister and her mother got named. It would add personality, maybe reflect on some specific concrete memories with them. Speaking of Driggs not having a body, Pellalandra can log off whenever and go into the real world and have space and time. He can't ever do that. He can be God here in this digital world, but he knows that it's just the virtual world. Is there any part of him that misses being physical, attending church in person, being with friends, family, loved ones? He can never experience that. So I think that these are some darker thoughts, and maybe that would cramp the ending a little bit because it's an uplifting ending. But I feel like these are questions that should be asked or answered in some way. Kim's an Asian surname. Agent Kim is Asian. And Octavian is described earlier on by Rains as being Asian too. And if Pellalandra is the daughter of Agent Kim and Octavian is described as being Asian, and Octavian and Pellalandra are twins, then that means she's Asian and Driggs is white, white digital code. So that means, and they're getting married together.
Soon the great journey shall begin. But when it does, the weight of your heresy will stay your feet, and you shall be left behind.
Another thing about the ending, so they're giving out implants to people, they're working with the doctor to spread information. That's all well and good. Are they doing anything physical in the world at all? Or is it just online? Is it just online, which isn't completely worthless? It's definitely not. But I would be curious, are they doing more? I really like this, and we definitely went places I did not think we were going to go. A couple slowdowns here and there to flesh out some characters and such, so they would have a bit more of an impact. I would enjoy that, but overall, yeah, absolutely. Really strong recommendation. I really want to read more by this guy. I think this is his only book out right now. And another thing with the United States of Death, where it's just they're spreading information. What is the plan there? Just information itself feels a little libertarian to me. Libertarian, they're just kind of turtling up, which maybe that's not the worst strategy all the time, but compare it to a real-time strategy game, right? You're building a base, your enemies are building bases. You like send little units out to like get resources and fight for like strategic locations, and like you build shit with these resources. If you just turtle up all the time and always try to like avoid conflict with your opponent, you will lose if you're playing against a player that is insistent on playing and winning the game and gathering resources and taking territory. So I don't know. I feel like they have to be like a little more proactive against the government, a little more on the attack. They can't just like move out to the middle of the woods and just try to not interact with society because society's going to come knocking one day. Of course, I'm just talking about the book. And I will say, while like you do have to go out there and like take resources and territory and such, we're not like taking back academia or like publishing or things like that. We're not. That's a zero-sum game. We cannot take these things back. They will not give control of these back. It doesn't matter how much money these things lose. And if it's a rigged game, and it is a rigged game, then we have to build our own board. Now announcement time. So I have a link down below for this Pill Rots Substack. I got shared this on Substack. He does like little short stories. They're comedic. I thought they were funny as hell. There's one I particularly like. It's about a troll with AIDS. I don't know what else you were expecting. It's a short story about a troll with AIDS. I really liked it. I think it's funny. You can check that out if you want. I recently did a video on The Storyteller. This is a anthological series. John Hurt, he plays a storyteller. If you like folklore and that type of thing, I thought it was a nice, cozy little series. You can watch all of it for free on YouTube. I would recommend just checking the series out on YouTube. I have a link to it below. The Deus Ex video that I have been working on for a while, it's going to be late. I am not as far in the game as I thought I would be, just from other bullshit and life and everything, so I am sorry. Also, this is super fun. There's going to be no gameplay. None. Zero. Isn't that great? It's going to be a video about video games that ain't gameplay. There's no gameplay because it wouldn't record. I think it was just too old of a game, and no matter what I used, OBS or my other recording software, it would not record the game at all. It would pick up the audio, but that's it. When I put Deus Ex in a small window, I was able to record that, but the window was really fucking small, so it was really hard to control for me since I've also never played the game before. And when I put it in that windowed mode, suddenly everything was going at double speed. I mean, I would press W, I would shoot across a room, all the dialogue would run at double speed. It was really funny, but unplayable in that way. So I'm still working on that. That's going to be a few weeks away. It's definitely interesting so far. I'm liking it. It does show its age at times, so it's not perfect, but I think it's going to be a recommendation, but I haven't finished it. If you have a Steam account, and if you could wishlist this game, it is not out yet. It's coming out in Q1 of 2025. I believe so, unless that changes. This is Ramic. I think it's Total Machine Death. This is by Neo Crisis. Neo Crisis, if you've ever read Agion, you've seen this artwork in there. Also, if you've read Dual Han. But if you've ever read Agion, you will recognize some of Neo Crisis's artwork from there. He's an artist. He's working on a video game. It's Ramic, the narrator, who also got a story in the last issue of Agion. It's on Steam. I think if enough people like wishlist a game on Steam, it like helps it in the algorithms or other people see it. So I have a link to that below. If you have the time and the game sounds interesting to you, it looks like it's going to be kind of a shooter level. Like you have your Ramic guy on the screen and you like go across levels, like defeating bosses and stuff. It looks interesting. I'm definitely going to review it when it comes out. But yeah, if you could wishlist that, I think it helps. Movie I saw lately, I'm just going to bitch about it here because I don't want to do a review. Internal Affairs. Basically, it has Richard Gere and one of the Baldwin brothers. They are bad white cops in L.A. And then we have the Internal Affairs guys. I forget his one name, but it's essentially a Cuban guy and his lesbian cop partner, and then the one noble black guy. They're all working together, and by the end of the movie, these two white corrupt cops are put down, and this is the new order. This is the new system. I don't know if I'm just reading into stuff too much, but it feels a little there, right? Where it's like, okay, our heroes are the Cuban guy, the lesbian, and the noble black guy who's not a corrupt cop. And I'm like, okay, cool. I don't know. I did not care for it. That is it. Probably going to have some other videos. I think I'm going to do some like normie bait book reviews. Like there's some more like kind of popular fantasy series that's not going to take away from the Trough. But I think I might do some of those to just kind of drum some shit up. Those might be coming out in a few weeks to months. Next Trough is going to be a couple weeks away, probably 6 to 7. I'm really sorry about this taking longer than usual. It's just, yeah, I fucked myself. If you're listening to this at the end, then it's Wednesday night, very late Wednesday night, and I still have to go into work tomorrow early. So I'm hopefully going to be able to edit all this stuff and have it out by Friday. That's the hope. That's going to be it from me. Thank you for listening, and White Pill Media out.